Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Iron Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Raven Mutation Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. From the early age of 4, he experienced painful ripping of wings sprouting from his back. His mother was disgusted. His father was horrified and disappointed. He was supposed to inherit fire breathing, or at the very least, telekinesis. Nobody liked Izuku. Not his own mother or father. Not even anybody at school. He was a loser, a pathetic excuse for a human. He had wings that were far too big for his small body, his tongue was pointed, his hair had feathers blended in it, his voice was monotone, his nails were different. He was a nobody. Except he wasn't. He had Katsuki, and that's all that really mattered. Even if when he went over to his house covered in bruises or bleeding wounds, Katsuki was there. He defended him from the bullies at school, and the teachers that ignored him when he would plea for help. He would preen his feathers that were too far to reach, and he would ask if he was okay even if he is hot-headed. He would be alright as long as he had his friend. At the age of 5, his father has left, claiming that Izuku was an abomination, a result of an affair. Neither sides of the family had a physical mutation, so Hisashi accused Inko of having an affair, and it was true. Hisashi was never his father, and being a child, Izuku was confused. Why was his father leaving? Why has his mother crying? What is happening? Why am I alone? As Izuku aged, it got worse. His mother always screamed at him, blaming him for her husband leaving her, for existing. It wasn't his fault for being alive. If she wanted to, she could have just got rid of him before he was born, but of course, the act had to continue, and his mother was an amazing actress. When he was 7, his mother laid hands on him. She brought home strange men after she got home from the bars, which led to things that should never happen to a young boy. Katsuki always knew something was wrong, but Izuku always denied it, even when there was blood stained on a pair of his pants, or when he had bruises the shape of hands on his body. At the age of 9, Izuku was kicked out. Well, not exactly kicked out. His mother tried to kill him with her quirk. She forced the air out of his lungs with her quirk. She used her quirk to aim knives at him. She thought she killed him. He laid limp on the floor, his heart beating irregularly, his blood pooling around the stab wounds, his wings clipped. She thought he was dead, and she headed to her bed, but not after drinking all the whiskey out of the cabinet and watching the blood pool grow larger. He knew how to play dead, even if his heart was burning, and his lungs felt as if they were to burst. He crawled out of the house when she decided he was no longer entertaining to watch, and that's when he met the underground hero. Aizawa usually doesn't work this late, but when the police received a call from a young child claiming he heard screaming from the next house over, he was sent on scene. He expected a couple things, but he never expected to find a young boy gripping onto the concrete to try and pull himself away from the house, trailing blood behind him, with large wings wrapping around him protectively. After that, it was a blur. He held the small boy in his arms, deciding that he would be faster than an ambulance. He used his capture weapon to jump from building to building, and he was at the hospital in the matter of minutes. The boy's blood seeping into his dark clothes, his capture weapon now stained with blood. That's how he ended up sitting in the waiting room with his husband talking to the nurse. "He will be okay, love. The nurse just told me that he was stable, and we are allowed to wait in his room until he wakes up." His husband, Hisashi, told him. Aizawa nodded, getting out of his chair and following the nurse to the young boy's room. He looked so small and fragile. The medical equipment surrounding him looked foreign to the small boy. Tsukachi called him earlier to let him know that the assumed mother was taken into custody and would be investigated. His name was Izuku Midoriya, quirk registered as Raven, and he was 9 years old. His father lives in America and has no grandparents or next of kin. He's alone. While Aizawa didn't exactly like children, and was only 26, along with being freshly married. He felt bad for this boy, and had a desire to protect him from anything or anybody that would ever harm him. He sat down in the chair next to Izuku's bed, and put his hand on the child's arm. "I was Dash. He's not going back." Hisashi smiled. "I was going to say, I was thinking we could see if we could use our foster license to use." If they weren't already married, he would have proposed right there. Aizawa looked at his husband. "You're okay with this?" he asked. "You already know I love children, and while we're still young and only in our 20s, you seem quite attached." His husband explained. It's true, Aizawa knew what it was like growing up in foster care, and found himself attached to Izuku. Hizashi caressed Izuku's hair, trying to tame the wild curls that were messed up and stained with blood. Tsukachi was going to have a lot of paperwork to do. He woke up to his alarm going off, beeping in irregular tone. His body hurt. To be precise, everything hurt. His wings twitched uncomfortably, the clothing on him wasn't lying right, and the room was far too bright. Where was he? The last thing he could remember. His mother tried to kill him. Izuku opened his eyes, bracing himself for his mother to be waiting in his room, ready to finish the job she couldn't do. But he wasn't in his room, and that wasn't his alarm going off. It was a heart monitor. He was in a hospital, and for once, he wasn't alone. Someone was here with him, but he was too scared to look. Was it his mother? Had she found pity in him? Had she decided that he should live at the last second? He didn't want to go home. "You're up." A deep voice spoke with a hint of relief. It wasn't his mom. He turned in surprise to find a man with long black hair dressed in a stained black jumpsuit. He knew him. He's an underground hero named Eraserhead. Did he save him? He tried to use his voice to respond, but he couldn't. It hurt. Why did it hurt so bad? It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. A hand grabbed his, and he heard that deep voice again, coaching him through breathing, and that irregular beating in the background grew more stabilized. "You're safe. Don't use your voice. Your vocal cords were damaged, but they will heal. You will be okay." The man said comfortingly. He was safe, but for how long? Would he be brought back to his mother? "You're not going back," he said, as if reading Izuku's mind. Izuku looked at the man again in shock. Did he have a mind-reading quirk? His thoughts were soon interrupted as a young lady walked in with a clipboard. She must be a nurse. "You're awake, that's good. How are you feeling?" On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being no pain, and 5 being extreme, "Show me with your hand, okay?" The lady said, her voice soothing. He felt relaxed just from hearing it. He held up his hand with 4 fingers up. She smiled softly and nodded while she walked up to the bag of liquids hung next to him. He had a needle in his arm connecting to the bag. His mother told him about these from her job. "Hey kiddo, it seems like you've had a bit of a tough time, huh? I'm going to be your nurse. My name is Yuki. Let's break it down. So, first off, you might have noticed that talking feels a bit funny or hurts. That's because something called respiratory failure happened, which means the air wasn't getting to your lungs properly." She begins, trying to explain it as simply as possible. Now, because of that, the doctors found something called arrhythmia. It's like your heart doesn't beat in the usual way. But don't worry, they have some special medicines that will help your heart beat more normally. She smiles at Izuku, using her hands expressively. And about your voice, it's because of something called vocal cord paresis. It's a bit like when one of your vocal cords doesn't work as well as it should, like not opening or closing properly. But don't you worry, the doctors are going to help fix you up. She smiles, starting to get out some bandages. "I'm going to start changing your bandages on your arms, okay?" she said. Izuku nods and turns to look at the man next to him to distract himself from the bandages being unwrapped. "Now it's my turn to explain. My name is Shoyuta Aizawa. I'm a hero. I'm the one who found you and brought you to the hospital. Is it all right to talk about your mother, kiddo?" Aizawa asked gently. Izuku internally cringed, not wanting to talk about her, but nodded instead. She was taken into custody by the police and is being investigated. Because of that, when you are released from the hospital, you won't be able to go home. That's where I come in. You will be coming to stay with me during your recovery. Do you think you're okay with that?" Aizawa said. Izuku thought for a second, thoughts rushing through his head, ruling out the pros and cons. Aizawa looked at the kid nervously. This would be a little awkward if the kid said no. Hizashi would be devastated. He was just setting up the guest room for Izuku while the kid was asleep, and even he was already attached to the child. But before he could continue to spiral in his thoughts, Izuku nodded, seeming to be content with his decision. The nurse had finished up with redressing his wounds and said she would fetch the doctor to discuss treatment plans. I do have to warn you though, kiddo. I do have a loud husband who will end up spoiling you relentlessly. He will probably be here soon to visit you. Are you all right with that? Aizawa snickered, trying to lighten the mood for Izuku, which seemed to work as the child smiled. I have 2 cats too, do you want to see pictures of them? He asked, unlocking his phone and opening the photo album of the hundreds of pictures of the 2 cats. Izuku nodded excitedly. The 2 of them would get along perfectly. Hisashi found himself in the middle of a mall, hunched over his phone, feverishly researching ravens where they nest, their characteristics. Mutant quirks often mirrored the traits of their respective mutations. Once Hisashi felt confident in his knowledge, he embarked on his shopping spree, grabbing sheets, blankets, clothes, hygiene products, anything he thought the boy would like. He might as well have cleared out several stores at this point. He already adored this kid and hardly knew him. Oh God, Namuri was going to kill him. The doctor entered the room with Yuki, both holding clipboards again. Hey buddy, my name is Soda. I'm just going to explain the plan from here. I'm going to prescribe you medication for your heart. It'll help it beat normally, okay? For the vocal cord paresis, you'll have to go to voice therapy to help you regain control of your vocal cords, Dr. Soda explained while filling out a prescription. Otherwise, you should be able to be discharged sometime today. We just want to make sure your medication gets filled before you leave. The man smiled before asking to speak to Aizawa in the hallway. This was all a lot to take in. His heartbeat wasn't normal because of his mother, and he wouldn't be able to talk for a while. He just couldn't process it all. His body felt like it was floating between realities, but before he could drift too far away, Aizawa roped him back in with the nurse, Yuki, behind him. Hey buddy, the doctor sent over the medications to the pharmacy, and the paperwork has been filled out for you to be discharged. Would you like to get changed and get out of here? The cats are gonna love you, kiddo, Aizawa said carefully. Izuku nodded and smiled. Yuki came over, removed the 4, and placed a gauze pad on his arm. Aizawa said he placed some clothes in the bathroom for him and would be right outside the door if he needed help. Time flew by after that. 1 second he was in the bathroom changing and maneuvering his wings through the holes on his shirt, and the next he was being buckled into the back seat. He felt floaty and weird, like nothing was real. The ride to the pharmacy was quick, or maybe it wasn't, and time was just flying by for him. Then he floated again, caught in between. Hey Izuku, we are here, Aizawa announced, pulling into the driveway, bringing him back from his floating state. Izuku looked out the window, observing the big, pretty apartment building in front of him. His mother's house was always dark and cold, full of nightmares. They pulled into the garage and soon enough, they were going up the elevator. It made his stomach feel funny. He blinked and he was at a door. What was going on? Why was time moving so fast? And then he saw yellow. He always liked the color yellow. He felt warmth, a coziness he hadn't felt in a long time, before he had a quirk, back when his home wasn't dark and scary, back when it was bright and full of comfort. Hello, little listener. The man, the physical embodiment of the sun, bent down to his height level in front of him. I'm Hisashi. Yamada, I'm this big guy's husband. Are you hungry? I just got done cooking some dinner. Hisashi smiled. Wait, dinner? How long had he been asleep? Ignoring the thought, Izuku studied his face and realized something. He looked familiar. He was Present Mic. His wings fluffed and fluttered in excitement. He wanted to say something, anything, but he couldn't. So he just resorted to nodding. He was too tired to be upset about his voice. Yamada pulled out a chair for him and placed a plate of curry in front of him, with a glass of water. Yamada gave Aizawa a quick kiss and sat down at the table with their meals in front of them. They ate with small talk, and Izuku got to know them better. Soon enough, he heard a small meow and looked down at the ground, happy to see the cat that was in the many photos Aizawa showed him. Ah, that's BSE, Aizawa said blankly, while Hisashi tried to contain his laughter at the ridiculousness of the name he told to a 9-year-old. Izuku smiled and let the cat come to him. Bizu rubbed against his hand, purring and chirping in delight at the attention. The cat was a rag doll with one eye. He remembered Aizawa telling him how he found the cat in an alleyway. And of course, where there's one, there's two. The other cat came up but stayed further away, only staring. Izuku kept his distance. He had to earn the trust of the cat. He shouldn't get attached, he might not be here forever. They would eventually get tired of him too. His food finished, and he grew drowsy. He shouldn't be tired, he had to make sure he was truly safe, and this wasn't just a trick. Unfortunately, the meds he was given at the hospital were catching up to him, and he could hardly keep his eyes open. Before you fall asleep, bud, you gotta take your medication, okay? Aizawa said, placing a singular pill in front of him, and waited for him to take it. He obliged, swallowing the pill, and felt himself falling asleep in the chair. Before he could fully fall asleep, he was picked up carefully, the steady hands being mindful of the big wings that drooped to the floor. Maybe it wasn't so bad to let him trust these people. They were heroes, after all. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. He was placed into a very plush bed, with covers being tucked over him comfortably. Aizawa ruffled his hair before saying goodnight. Maybe he would be okay, and not everyone was out to get him. Kid, you're drifting again, Aizawa gently observed. Sorry, Izuku signed to Aizawa. It had been a couple of weeks since he was taken in by the two and started learning sign language. His mother had been imprisoned, and he had met Tsukachi, slowly getting to know his new saviors. Yet, despite the assurances of safety and the absence of his mother, the young child inside him still yearned for her embrace, for that warmth only a mother could provide. You don't have to apologize, Izuku, Aizawa assured, his hand resting on Izuku's shoulder, offering comfort that still felt foreign. Izuku flinched. He doubted he would ever get used to this kind of care. Aizawa and Hisashi treated him with more kindness than his parents ever had. They tucked him in at night, helped preen the feathers on his wings just like Katsuki used to do, and comforted him through his nightmares. They even got him a nightlight for when the darkness threatened to overwhelm him. I was thinking we could go to Yui today. The principal has taken an interest in you. Would you like to meet him? Aizawa asked, his voice softened for the child. Izuku nodded eagerly, his wings fluttering in excitement as he ran to his room to get dressed. Hisashi emerged from their room, smiling at the sight of Izuku's enthusiasm. I thought I heard tiny feet running. Is he okay with going to Yui? He asked as he settled beside Aizawa on the couch. Aizawa nodded in relief. Yes, I'm glad he agreed. He needs something to distract his thoughts. Nedzu said he would do some testing with him to determine his academic level for online classes. Hisashi raised an eyebrow. You're letting him meet Nedzu? Are you sure it's not too overwhelming for him? Nedzu can be a bit intense sometimes. Aizawa chuckled softly. I believe Nedzu can help distract him. And I was thinking we could set him up with Hound Dog for therapy. As if on cue, Izuku rushed out of his room, excitement evident as he placed his shoes in front of Aizawa. Help! Izuku signed, his eyes shining with gratitude. Aizawa nodded, assisting him with his shoes and double knotting the laces. Izuku signed thank you before reaching out his hand to Hisashi. Hand? Holding hands always brought Izuku comfort. Hisashi smiled, interlacing his fingers with Izuku's. You ready, listener? He asked, his grin belying the sadness in his eyes. Izuku nodded eagerly, and then they were off. Aizawa buckled him into the car, and then settled into the passenger seat. The radio played softly in the background, with Hisashi humming along to the tune, while Aizawa attempted to steal a moment of rest before the challenging day ahead at the hero school. The corridors stretched wide and empty, an unusual sight for the bustling hero school. Izuku had anticipated the usual hubbub of teenagers chatting and laughter echoing through the halls, but instead, there was a serene quietness that enveloped the space. The journey to the principal's office was brief, and before Aizawa could even raise his hand to knock, the door swung open, revealing a figure that resembled a mouse, albeit larger, dressed in slacks and a dress shirt. Well, hello. Come in. I've been eager to meet you, little Izuku. Would you three like some tea? The principal asked, ushering them inside his office. The room boasted a grand desk, much larger than what a creature like Nedzu would need, a plush love seat against one wall, and a chessboard adorning the desk. Tea would be wonderful, Nedzu, but I'm assuming Aizawa would prefer coffee over tea, so don't worry about him, Hisashi replied, sinking comfortably into the chair in front of the desk. Izuku nodded, recalling how his mother used to make him tea when he was younger. Aizawa grumbled a refusal and settled into the chair beside Hisashi. Izuku gravitated toward the couch, its soft cushions beckoning to him, much more accommodating for his wings compared to the stiff chairs. Nedzu finished pouring the tea and clasped his hands together. "Well then, let's get started, shall we?" he announced. "I'm Nedzu Yui's principal. Today, I was going to give you some tests for you to work on while Yamada and Aizawa attend to their classrooms. Are you fine with that, little Izuku?" Nedzu inquired, his beady eyes fixed on Izuku, his voice brimming with enthusiasm while his eyes betrayed no emotion. Aizawa and Hisashi watched Izuku patiently, silently reassuring him that it was okay. Though Izuku would have preferred to stay by their side, he nodded, not wanting to be a burden any more than he might already have been. Aizawa and Yamada bid their goodbyes, promising to return, which reassured Izuku. The test began, and it was surprisingly easy for Izuku. Though he stumbled on a few questions, he persisted. Before he knew it, he was placing the packet on the desk in front of Nedzu. Nedzu's eyes gleamed with interest. "You're finished already? My little Izuku. You've completed this in under an hour. I'll begin reviewing your results, but in the meantime, work on this other one." Nedzu handed him another packet, which appeared heavier. Izuku nodded determinedly and began his testing once again. This test seemed to have more challenging questions than easy ones, but he persevered. He wasn't one to give up. Around an hour later, Izuku placed the test on the desk once again, then signed, "Done now." Nedzu seemed ecstatic. "I believe we are going to get along just fine, little Izuku. You have finished your testing. Why don't you go sit back on the couch and doodle on this pad of paper in the meantime?" Nedzu suggested eagerly. Izuku nodded, grabbing the pad from the table and settling back into the couch. How thrilling! Nedzu hadn't had the chance to see a child with such a high intelligence level in quite some time. Izuku's IQ was remarkably high for his age. As the hours passed, Aizawa finally entered the room, sighing at the mischievous expression on Nedzu's face. Language show. Hisashi scolded from behind. As the hours passed, the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm, golden hues across the room. Izuku sat on the couch, his small frame hunched over the pad of paper, his wings occasionally twitching with excitement or concentration. Each slide of his pencil seemed deliberate, yet his expression held a sense of childlike wonder, as if each doodle was a small masterpiece in its own right. Aizawa watched from his seat, his exhaustion evident in the lines etched on his face. He had hoped this visit would provide a welcome distraction for Izuku, a chance for the boy to explore a world beyond the confines of their small apartment. Yet, as he observed Izuku's furrowed brow and determined gaze, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. Hisashi, ever the optimist, attempted to lighten the mood with his cheerful banter, but even his infectious laughter seemed muted against the weight of their collective worries. He stole glances at Aizawa, silently conveying his concern, but Aizawa merely shook his head, his focus never wavering from Izuku. Meanwhile, Nedzu buzzed around the room like an over-caffeinated bee, his excitement palpable as he reviewed Izuku's test results with fervor. Each nod of approval or thoughtful hum only served to heighten the tension in the room, like a crescendo building towards an inevitable climax. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Nedzu turned to Aizawa with a gleam in his eye that sent a shiver down Aizawa's spine. "Remarkable, isn't he, Aizawa? Young Izuku possesses a brilliance that is truly unparalleled. With the right guidance, he could become a force to be reckoned with." Aizawa's throat felt dry as he struggled to find the words to respond. He knew all too well the dangers that awaited those who stood out in a world filled with heroes and villains alike. But as he glanced at Izuku, lost in his own world of doodles and dreams, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope stirring within him. With a heavy sigh, Aizawa nodded in agreement, his resolve hardening with each passing moment. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head-on, for the sake of the boy who had unwittingly stolen his heart. And so, as the day drew to a close and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Aizawa made a silent vow to protect Izuku no matter the cost. For in that moment, amidst the chaos and uncertainty of their lives, he knew one thing for certain: they were a family, bound together by love, loyalty, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Voice therapy had been progressing well. He managed to string a few words together, even small sentences, and his pronunciation was steadily improving. Yet, despite the progress, he remained nervous about using his voice, a fear deeply ingrained within him. His mother never approved of his mumbling, and he feared Aizawa and Hisashi might follow suit if they heard him speak. The thought of losing them was unbearable. Following their meeting with Nezu, they discovered he was 2 years ahead of his grade, with his current skill level equivalent to that of a 6th grader. Izuku had always been intelligent, but his teachers never truly acknowledged it. Nezu placed him in a private online school along with personal lessons, much to Aizawa's disapproval. Which brings us to where he finds himself now, in his lesson with Nezu. It was almost therapeutic, speaking freely with the stout creature, feeling a sense of comfort and trust he had never experienced before. You make an excellent point, little Izuku. Why don't you jot that down in your analysis notebook? Nezu responded to the timid child. Izuku nodded, quickly scribbling down the information. I do have a question for you, little Izuku. Not related to our current discussion, Nezu paused, looking at Izuku with curiosity. Why yes? Izuku's voice still carried a hint of uncertainty, a slight stutter betraying his lack of practice. I've noticed you haven't spoken vocally to Aizawa and Hisashi. Is there a reason for that? Nezu jumped down from his stool and settled on the couch next to Izuku, gently preening the feathers on his wings, a comforting ritual they shared. Izuku pondered for a moment, cautious not to strain his voice. They might get rid of me, he stammered, his throat tightening with emotion. Nezu paused, but continued to roll the feathers between his furry paws. And why do you think that, little one? He inquired gently, without pressure. And my mother. She didn't like my voice, Izuku murmured, his throat constricting. He fought back tears, refusing to show any signs of weakness. I see now. You fear they might find you annoying, or too much, like your mother did. What? Correct. Nezu's understanding tone offered a sense of validation. Izuku nodded, feeling a pang of embarrassment. He couldn't bear to lose his newfound family. They meant everything to him. It's natural to feel that way, Izuku, given what you've been through. Have Aizawa and Hisashi attended your voice therapy sessions? Nezu inquired, his eyes filled with empathy. Izuku shook his head, opting to chirp instead of write his quirk analysis. I'm just scared, he admitted, his vision blurring with unshed tears. Out of all the students I've taught and come to know, I am certain Yamada and Aizawa wouldn't do that to you. They have helped you in many ways, haven't they? Nezu's reassuring words offered a glimmer of hope. Then why would they turn you away now, little one? Do not be afraid. I understand humans can be unpredictable, but I assure you, Aizawa and Yamada are very trustworthy, Nezu reassured with a comforting smile. I'll try, sir, Izuku whispered. Remember what I said about formalities, young one. You don't need to address me as sir. You may call me Nezu, the stout creature reminded kindly, taking a sip of tea after finishing preening his feathers. I believe Aizawa will be here soon to pick you up. You can trust my judgment, little Izuku, Nezu comforted, just as Aizawa knocked on the door, entering shortly after. Hey kiddo, how was your lesson? Aizawa asked, leaning against the door frame. It was good, Izuku signed, standing up and stretching his wings. He bowed to Nezu before turning to Aizawa. Goodbye, Izuku. I'll see you next time. Nezu waved his paw. Izuku waved back, walking out with Aizawa. Hisashi is already waiting in the car out front. He mentioned he's preparing takoyaki for dinner. Is that all right with you? Aizawa inquired, casually sliding one hand into his pocket. Izuku nodded eagerly, reaching for Aizawa's free hand. They strolled to the car, where Aizawa graciously opened the door for Izuku, ensuring he was securely buckled before settling into the passenger seat. Hey listener. One of my friends would love to meet you sometime. Are you up for it? She's really nice, I promise. Hisashi chimed in from the driver's seat as they embarked on their journey home. Izuku nodded in agreement, sensing Hisashi's gaze in the rearview mirror. Awesome. I'll be sure to send her a text when we arrive, Hisashi affirmed cheerfully. As they engaged in small talk, Izuku's mind drifted to Katsuki, a twinge of longing tugging at his heart. Was his best friend okay? Was he worried? Did he miss Izuku as much as Izuku missed him? He would ask to call Katsuki, knowing his number by heart, but he didn't want to be a nuisance. Arriving home, they entered the apartment, but something felt off. Was his new family already growing tired of him? They couldn't be, Nezu had assured him of their trustworthiness. Exhaustion weighed heavily on Izuku as he scratched his palm with his talons, a futile attempt to stay awake. His bed didn't feel like home anymore, not the home that smelled of cinnamon whiskey and moldy dishes, but the one that smelled of morning coffee and fresh air. His bed no longer carried that familiar scent of home. Why don't you go wash up, kiddo? Hisashi will start dinner, and I'll be in the living room working on some paperwork, Aizawa said, ruffling Izuku's hair. Though Izuku didn't show it, he cherished that touch, if only for a fleeting moment of warmth. He leaned into it before heading to the shower. Observing Izuku's departure, Aizawa remarked, I think he's growing more comfortable, Zashi. What makes you say that, love? Hisashi inquired with a warm smile. He seems more open to touch. He didn't flinch when I touched his hair, he leaned into it. That's progress, right? Aizawa explained, his own smile reflecting his satisfaction. That's great progress. I'm glad he's opening up more, Hisashi responded, laying his hand atop Aizawa's before giving him a kiss. That night, as they drifted off to sleep, they didn't notice the absence of several items from their closet. Chirping became a very common thing to hear in the Yamada-Aizawa household. It came to a shock at first for Aizawa and his husband since they haven't heard him speak yet, but that also changed. Izuku walked out his room and sat next to Aizawa on the couch, who was working on a case. He wrapped his wings around himself. He was hungry. What's up, kiddo? Aizawa asked, not looking up from his work. Nezu said he could trust them, and he trusted Nezu. Instead of signing, he used his voice. I'm hungry. Izuku mumbled. Aizawa paused. He wished Hisashi was here to see this. Okay, buddy, let's head to the kitchen and find something for you to eat. Aizawa got up and stretched, his back popping several times. He held his hand out for Izuku to take, and he took it. Izuku chirped in delight, holding his hand tighter as they walked to the kitchen. Would you like me to make you a sandwich? Or cut up some fruit? It's up to you, Aizawa asked, opening the fridge. Izuku thought for a second. Fruit sounded good, but so did the sandwich. Aizawa's probably hungry too. Can we make both and we could share? Izuku said, looking up at the tall man. Aizawa smiled. Sure, we could do that. Do you want to help? Izuku nodded, itching his arm nervously. Itch with your knuckles, your nails could hurt you, Aizawa said, taking out some strawberries and deli meat. Sorry, he muttered, feeling embarrassed. Aizawa shook his head. You don't have to apologize, kiddo. I just don't want you to hurt yourself. I know things are tough right now, but me and Hisashi are here for you, alright? Izuku nodded, not knowing what to say. While preparing food, the doorknob was turning, causing Izuku to pause what he was doing and flare his wings. Who was here? Aizawa seemed to notice Izuku's concern, but before he could say anything, a familiar blonde walked inside. I'm home, Hisashi announced, and shut the door behind him. Izuku relaxed, his wings resting more comfortably on his back now. Welcome home, Aizawa said, and handed Izuku the pack of strawberries and placed the cutting board in front of him. Do you feel comfortable cutting the strawberries? Aizawa asked. Hisashi walked into the kitchen, with his hair in style and his hero clothes on. Izuku made a sound of approval, and took the knife handed to him. Hisashi paused walking and turned around with a huge smile on his face. Aizawa could tell he wanted to scream and hug the child but resisted. Izuku was still getting used to touch. Thus, be careful when cutting them, listener, Hisashi said excitedly. I'm going to go take a shower, I'm all sweaty, I'll be out in a bit. Hisashi kissed Aizawa's cheek and ruffled Izuku's hair before heading to the bathroom. While Aizawa was preparing the sandwiches, Izuku did good with the first couple strawberries, but he started shaking. Every time he would cut into the strawberries, It reminded him of his mother. It reminded him of the knives being thrown at him. "You all right?" Aizawa asked, his eyebrow raised. He noticed the shaking and gently grabbed Izuku's hand, taking the knife away. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so hard just to cut some strawberries." Izuku sobbed, feeling his eyes filling with tears. Aizawa acted quickly, and put his hands on Izuku's shoulders slowly. "Kid, I need you to breathe." "It's okay, match my breathing." He grabbed Izuku's hand and placed it on his chest, so he could feel the breaths Aizawa was taking. The cats flocked the kitchen and meowed, pawing at Izuku's legs. "See, Izuku, the cats are worried about you. Can you show them you're okay?" Aizawa asked. Izuku sniffled, and his breathing steadied. Before Aizawa could say anything else, Izuku hugged him, his arms wrapping tightly around the other's waist. His sniffles muffled by the fabric of Aizawa's chest. Aizawa stilled, his hands stilling before holding the child close, whispering soothing and comforting words to the kid. Izuku clutched onto his shirt tightly, his talons clawing through them, ripping the fabric slightly. "It's okay, kiddo, let it all out," he soothes, running his hand through the feathered curls. Izuku's sobs slowed over time, his eyes heavy. Hizashi came out of the shower around that time and walked into the kitchen. A soft gasp came from him. Aizawa shot him a look to try and not startle him, so Hizashi finished preparing their lunch, cutting the remaining strawberries into hearts and removing the crust from one of the sandwiches. "Why don't we go sit down and eat, okay buddy?" Hizashi finished up our lunch, Aizawa said softly, unraveling his arms from around the kid. Izuku nodded, rubbing the tears from his eyes, and walked to the dining table to sit down. Hizashi and Aizawa followed behind. Hizashi placed the plates down on the table while Aizawa sat down next to Izuku. Once Izuku smelt the food in front of him, he immediately began eating, happy that the crust was cut off from the sandwich, and beaming in joy at the sight of the heart-shaped strawberries. "How did you do that?" Izuku asks Hizashi, pointing at the cut strawberries on his plate with his dark claws. Hizashi smiles. "We have some super cool fruit cutters that make different shapes. I can show you sometime if you'd like," he says, taking a bite out of his own sandwich. Izuku nodded happily and continued eating his food. Aizawa began making some small talk with his husband about how his patrol was. Once Izuku finished his food, he looked up to them both. Can I call one of my friends?" He asks quietly, scratching his arm nervously with his nails but quickly used his knuckles instead, remembering what Aizawa told him earlier. Aizawa raised an eyebrow while Hizashi smiled brightly. "Of course. We should have asked earlier if you had someone you would have liked to contact." Hizashi hummed, standing up to grab his phone from the counter. Izuku has been debating on whether he should ask or not for the past couple of days, even going as far to ask Nedzu if it was a good idea, and of course the Chimera said it was, even encouraging him to go ahead to do so. Hizashi walked over to Izuku and handed him his phone, the screen unlocked and the phone app already opened. "Go ahead and give them a ring, if you know their number at least, if not we could totally find it for you," he said with a smile. "You can call them in your room if you'd like some privacy, kid," Aizawa said from across of him, still finishing his food. Izuku gladly took that offer and got out from his seat. "I know his number. Thank you," he muttered out before walking quickly to his room to bundle up into his nest and typing in the number he had memorized. The phone rang and rang and rang until someone picked up. "Bokugo Residence, this is Mitsuki speaking." A grunt came from the line. He smiled immediately. "It's Izuku. Can I talk to Kaken?" he asked excitedly. A soft gasp came from the line. "Izuku? Oh honey, yes of course, I'll go get the brat for you," she said, her voice full of concern and relief. The line was silent before a gruff voice came from across the speaker. "Zuku? You're okay?" Izuku giggled in glee, happy to hear his friend's voice. "I'm okay, Kaken," he said. For the next hour, they sat on the phone talking until a knock came at the door. "Izuku? Is it okay if we have a conversation real quick?" Hizashi said from behind the door. "I gotta go, Kaken. But I'll talk to you soon, I pinky promise," Izuku said and hung up the phone, and walked to the door to open it, holding the phone out for the blonde man. "How did your talk go with your friend, little listener?" Hizashi asked, taking the phone from him and pocketing it. Izuku began to enthusiastically talk about the call while they began walking to the living room to sit down. Izuku smiles at Aizawa, who was sitting down on the couch with another man, who was wearing a detective outfit. "Hey kiddo, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine. He's a detective and he has a pretty cool quirk," Aizawa says, his voice soft and gentle compared to his usual gruff and strict tone. Izuku looks up at the man that was sitting next to Aizawa with curious eyes. He hides behind Hizashi's leg nervously. "Hey little one, my name is Naomiso Tsukachi. I'm a detective and I'm here to ask you a couple questions. Is that all right?" he says. Izuku nods shyly, going to sit down on the couch next to Aizawa. Tsukachi brings out a recorder from his bag and sets it down on the coffee table, announcing the date and time. For the next hour, Izuku was asked several different questions based on the day that his mother attacked him. Everything he said was true, which only made Aizawa's and Hizashi's anger boil more. Tsukachi stops the recording and ruffles Izuku's hair. "You did a wonderful job today," he praises, standing up and putting his things back into his bag. Hizashi stands to walk Tsukachi to the door while Aizawa sat next to Izuku. Izuku's large wings wrapped around his body protectively. "You okay, kiddo?" Aizawa asked, running his fingers through the child's black hair to comfort him, eyebrows raising slightly when he felt a couple feathers mixed into his hair. Izuku nodded, leaning into Aizawa's side. "I'm okay. Jay just was a lot to remember," he mumbled, scratching his wrist with his knuckles. Hizashi soon returned with several blankets in his hands. "How about a movie night and some pizza after all that?" he offered, setting down the blankets on the couch beside the two. Aizawa nods and looked at Izuku for his answer. That sounds nice," Izuku said softly, his wings relaxing more and no longer wrapping around him. Hizashi smiles. "All right. I'll go put a pizza in the oven. You two find a movie to watch, all right?" That night, the new family cuddled up on the couch watched a hero documentary, Izuku's wings wrapped around the both in a protective manner with blankets swaddled around the three. Izuku thinks there is nothing else in the world he would want in this moment. To say Namuri was a mixture of surprised, happy, and mad was an understatement. "You adopted a child without telling me? Oh my god, he's so cute. You're telling me you have had this kid for 2 weeks now and you haven't introduced me?" Hizashi and Shoyuta both got an earful with lead to a mall trip, which Aizawa was dreading. Izuku was nervous, he didn't like big crowds all that much. "Hey Aizu, are you excited to meet Namuri?" "She's sure excited to meet you." Hizashi smiles. Hizashi was currently picking out an outfit for himself while Izuku sat on the floor with his knees to his chest. He was already ready, wearing a hoodie with cuts in the back of them for his wings and a pair of shorts. Hizashi, on the other hand, was trying to find the perfect outfit. Aizawa was napping on the couch in the living room dressed in what looked like pajamas. "Yeah, I guess she's nice, right?" Izuku mumbled. He was nervous, but he was also excited. It's been a while since he's been to a mall. "She's very nice, just a bit overbearing sometimes." Hizashi pulled out a shirt and decided it was good enough. He then headed towards his dresser to look for a pair of pants to match it. "Just let me or Sho know if today is too much at any time," he says, eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Izuku hums in acknowledgement, playing with the strings of his hoodie, fraying the ends of them with his sharp talons. I can't seem to find the pants I was thinking of, but I guess these will do." Hizashi mumbled, pulling out a pair of light blue loose-fit jeans. "All right, I'll be right back, just gotta go get dressed," Hizashi said, ruffling the kid's hair before heading the bathroom to change. Izuku preened at the touch, smiling slightly. A couple minutes later, Hizashi came back, now dressed in a white t-shirt, a red cardigan and the light blue jeans. His hair was also now tied into a half bun. He does a little spin and looked at Izuku with a satisfied grin. "What do you think?" "I think it looks pretty good," Hizashi asked, putting his hands on his hips. Izuku gave a thumbs up and got up from the floor. "I think it looks nice, I like the cardigan," he says softly, his talons still picking apart the hoodie string. Hizashi smiles, and they head out to the living room to wake Aizawa. "Namuri will be meeting us here, she should be here any minute now," he inquired, going towards the coach to shake his husband awake. Izuku giggled when Aizawa groaned and pushed his hand away and groggily got up. He was wearing a black crew neck along with a pair of, not surprising, black sweatpants. "You look nice," Aizawa compliments, standing up and stretching. Izuku winces when he hears his bones pop several times. "Nem will be here soon. I filled up one of the thermos with some coffee in the kitchen for you," Hisashi said, checking his phone. "Thanks, love," Aizawa murmured and kissed his husband's cheek and headed towards the kitchen. There was a knock on the door and then the sound of the door unlocking. Izuku's wings fluffed up defensively at the sound. The door opened and in came a woman with long dark purple hair and glasses. She was wearing a knitted beige sweater along with a pair of tight-fitting black jeans. "I'm here," she sang out loudly. She shut the door behind her and took off her shoes. Izuku relaxed, thinking this must be Nemuri. "Nem. It's been too long," Hisashi said happily, standing up from the couch to go greet the woman. Nemuri hugged him tightly. When they pulled away, she gasped in excitement when she saw Izuku. "Oh, you're just the cutest." "I'm Nemuri, honey, but you can call me Auntie Nem if you'd like." She smiled, walking over to Izuku to greet him. Izuku liked her immediately, not just because he recognized her as the Twilight hero, Midnight, but also because she just gave off good vibes. "I'm Izuku, it's nice to meet you." "Auntie Nem," he stuttered out, his face flushing nervously and his wings wrapping around him. She squealed, slowly bringing her hand to make sure he can see she's going to touch him. She ruffled his hair affectionately, which he preened at, smiling widely. "I love your wings. They are just the coolest. What does flying feel like?" she asked, her tone very light and cheery, different from the tone he heard from the videos of her fighting villains or talking to the press on the internet. Izuku frowns. I actually don't know. I haven't flown yet, wasn't allowed to when I lived with my mother," he said quietly. Nemuri's face softened. "Well, we are going to change that, right?" She looked over to Hisashi and Aizawa, who were standing in the corridor watching the interaction. Hisashi nodded. "We can start bringing you to Gym Gamma after your lessons with Nedzu," he said excitedly. "That way you'll be in a controlled environment to safely learn how to fly," he finishes. Izuku widened his eyes in surprise and smiled excitedly. "All right, now that we got that interaction finished, let's get this mall day over with," Aizawa groaned, taking a drink from the thermo in his hand. They headed towards the car and started the drive to the mall. Nemuri got into the back seat with Izuku and talked with him about anything and everything, from what his favorite food was to his opinion on the hero industry. They arrived to the mall shortly. They parked and all exited the vehicle. "All right, Birdie, where do you want to go first?" Nemuri asked, looking through her purse to reapply her lipstick. I don't know," Izuku responded shyly, itching his wrists with his knuckles. Nemuri smiles and kneels down slightly to his height to ruffle his hair. "That's all right, kiddo. Why don't we go to the Quirk Mutations store to see if we can find any clothes that has better access to your wings?" she said, her hands still brushing through the black curls, fingers occasionally getting stuck through some of the feathers littered in his hair. Izuku nodded, feeling awkward. His mother never really bought clothes for his mutation, or clothes in general for him. He always had to stretch out his clothes so they fit better, or his mom would buy clothes way too big for him so she wouldn't have to buy any clothes for him for a longer period of time. Any clothes she did buy were cheap or thrifted, which he didn't mind. He was grateful for it. Nemuri stood up and began to lead the way around the mall, Hisashi and her talking excitedly about spoiling the child. Izuku walked closer to Aizawa, debating whether it was okay to hold his hand or not. Aizawa seemed to notice and offered his hand, which Izuku took eagerly, feeling more at ease when he held the man's hand. They walked into the store and hunted down an employee to have them show the four of them where the winged mutation clothing section would be, which is where they were now, standing in front of the large section of clothing. "All right, Aizu, I thought we could get a little bit of everything, yeah? Some clothes for winter and fall and some for spring and summer. How does that sound?" Hisashi said, his voice louder to make himself heard over the chatter of the other people in the store and the music playing. Izuku still held onto Aizawa's hand tightly, feeling too much attention on him. "Yeah, that sounds fine," he mumbled. Hisashi smiled, seeming to notice that Izuku felt uncomfortable. "Okay, how about this? I'll show you a couple pieces of clothing and you can tell me how you feel about them." It's okay if you say no to certain things, he reassured. Izuku nodded, seeming to be okay with that. Aizawa sat down at one of the benches in the store, nursing his drink in his free hand while his other hand was holding onto Izuku's. Izuku sat next to him, not wanting to be too far away. Hizashi began picking out a few items from the racks, carefully selecting pieces he thought Izuku might like. He held up a dark blue hoodie with reinforced slits for wings and a soft, fluffy lining. How about this one, Aizu? It looks really cozy. Izuku reached out and felt the fabric, his eyes lighting up at the softness. I like it, he said quietly, giving a small nod. Nemuri grinned and pulled out a few more items, including a lightweight jacket and a couple of long-sleeve shirts in muted colors. These should be good for different seasons. And look, this one has a cool design on the back where your wings can peek through, she said, showing him a shirt with a subtle pattern around the wing openings. Izuku's eyes widened with interest. That's really nice. As they continued shopping, Hizashi found some thicker sweaters and some soft thinner shirts that were designed for flying. He showed them to Izuku, who gave his approval for most of the items. Whenever he seemed unsure, Hizashi would gently encourage him to voice his opinion, making sure Izuku knew it was okay to say no. After gathering a good selection of clothes, they went to go check out, which is when Aizawa lead the kid out of the store so Izuku didn't have to worry about the price. Once they were done at the Quirk Mutation store, they headed to a general clothing store to pick up some essentials like socks, underwear, and a few pairs of jeans. This part of the shopping trip went by quickly, as Izuku seemed to be getting more comfortable with the process. Their final stop was a hygiene store that specialized in products for people with mutant quirks. An employee helped them find the right shampoos, conditioners, and body washes for Izuku's unique needs. Hizashi was particularly grateful for the assistance, knowing how important it was to have the right products for Izuku's wings and hair. With their shopping done, they made their way back to the car, bags in tow. Izuku seemed tired but happy, a small smile on his face as they loaded the car. Now that we got the clothing and hygiene stuff out of the way, I was thinking we could go to a furniture store to pick up some things for your room. How does that sound? Hizashi asked, Nemuri in stride next to him. But I have everything I need, don't I? Izuku asked, tilting his head in confusion. Aizawa chuckled. Zashi means decorations and some bedding and all that to make your room more personalized to you, he explained, trying to ease the boy's confusion. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine, Izuku replied, still feeling a bit uncertain. His mother had never really bought things for his room at his old house. It just had a bed, a dresser, and a desk. Once they loaded the car up with the bags, they started driving to the furniture store. Nemuri, sitting next to Izuku, continued to chat with him, making him laugh with her stories and jokes, helping him feel more at ease with each passing moment. As they arrived at the furniture store, Nemuri and Hizashi were already buzzing with ideas, discussing different themes and styles that might suit Izuku's taste. Izuku, still holding Aizawa's hand, looked around with wide eyes. This was all so new to him, and he was still trying to wrap his head around the fact that he could have a room that felt truly his. All right, Birdie, what kind of colors and themes do you like? Nemuri asked, kneeling down to his level. Do you like superheroes, nature, space, or something else? Izuku thought for a moment, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the choices. I like green. And maybe nature-themed? I like stars too. I think that would be nice. Nature, stars, and green it is, Hizashi said, grinning. Let's start by picking out some bedding. How about we find some with a cool plant pattern? They wandered over to the bedding section, where there were numerous options. Nemuri and Hizashi held up different sets, showing Izuku a few with nature patterns and various shades of green. Izuku eventually settled on a set with dark green sheets and a white duvet cover with intricate designs of plants along with a very fluffy duvet. Good choice, Aizawa said, giving Izuku's hand a gentle squeeze. Next, they moved on to other decorations. Nemuri picked out a couple of framed prints with constellations and star maps, while Hizashi found some soft, fluffy throw pillows in shades of green and white. Izuku's eyes lit up when he saw a small, decorative nightlight shaped like a crescent moon, and Hizashi added it to the cart without hesitation. With the essentials and a few extra decorations chosen, They made their way to the checkout. Izuku felt a sense of excitement and gratitude bubbling up inside him. This was the first time anyone had gone out of their way to make him feel special and cared for, and he couldn't help but smile at the thought of having a room that truly felt like his own. As they loaded the car with their purchases, Namuri and Hisashi continued to chat animatedly about how they would help Izuku set everything up. Aizawa, sensing that Izuku might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the activity, leaned down and whispered, "You did great today, Izuku. I'm proud of you." Izuku looked up at Aizawa, his eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As they drove home, Izuku found himself feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging and hope. He couldn't wait to see his new room come together, and he knew that with Aizawa, Hisashi, and Namuri by his side, he was finally safe and loved. Izuku sat in front of Inui, also known as Hound Dog, the counselor at Aizawa and Yamada both said that it would be healthy and mandatory for him to start therapy. Izuku didn't like talking about his feelings all that much. It made him feel weak and vulnerable. He can't be weak, he can't let his guard down like he did with his mother. "Hello, Midoriya. I'm glad you're here today. Are you comfortable, pup?" The large man with dog-like features asked. He sat across from Izuku, with his legs crossed and a notebook in his hands. His presence was calming and relaxing. It soothed Izuku. "Why yes, I'm comfortable. Thanks." Izuku replied. Izuku sat in the couch that faced Inui's desk. His knees were to his chest, wings wrapped around him in a defensive manner, which seemed more and more of a frequent thing his wings did as time went on. "Are you familiar with how therapy works, Midoriya? Or are you more comfortable with Izuku?" Inui asked, his eyes that meant to look threatening and scary looked soft and welcoming to Izuku. "I am, please call me Izuku," the child replied, cringing when hearing his family name. Inui nods, jotting down something in his notebook. "Okay, I'll make sure to refer to you as Izuku from now on. How are you feeling today?" he asked. Izuku eyed the muzzle on the man's face curiously. Izuku hummed, "Nervous." He replied, avoiding the man's eyes. Inui nods understandingly. "That's completely normal. It can be a bit daunting to open up about personal things. Remember, this is a safe space for you to talk about anything on your mind." Izuku started to notice when Inui talks, his voice has a soft growl. "Okay." Izuku takes a deep breath. "Before we start, I'd like to let you know about patient confidentiality. Anything you say is private and confidential knowledge. The only thing I would tell your guardians is if you have thoughts of and/or are harming yourself or others. Does that make sense?" Inui explained. Izuku nodded, his wings opening up a little more. "Wonderful, let's start with something simple. Can you tell me a little about what brought you in today?" The dog-like man asked, his left hand holding his pen ready to write anything. He's left-handed, Izuku thought. "Well." Izuku sighs, finding the courage to open up to the hero. "I'm having a hard time dealing with, well, everything, my father and my mother, them separating, moving in with Aizawa and Yamada, my childhood," Izuku mumbles. Inui's ear flicks towards Izuku, making sure he can hear him well. "That sounds like a lot to handle. It's understandable that you're feeling overwhelmed. Let's take it one step at a time. Can you tell me about your parents? What were they like to you?" Inui asked, looking down at his paper for a second to jot something down. Izuku's face scrunches up a little bit, cringing at the thought of his parents. "They were the perfect parents until I got my quirk. No one in my family had a mutant quirk, or one like mine. That caused my father to be suspicious of my mother. He accused her of having an affair. They fought a lot and I felt like I was caught in the middle. Felt like my whole world was falling apart." Izuku said, his voice monotone, a side effect from his quirk. Inui wrote something down before looking up, his face looking softer than it was before. "It sounds like that was a painful and confusing time for you, Izuku. You mentioned feeling caught in the middle. Can you tell me more about what that was like for you?" he said softly. Izuku nodded. "Yeah, it felt like I was the problem, that they would have been happier if I didn't exist. I felt like I was tearing their life apart. I felt confused because my father, who might have not have been my actual dad, was being mean to my mom and I. I just wanted them to stop fighting and for us to be a family again. Izuku explained, his voice wavering. It was hard to tell him how he felt, because there truly were no words to describe the feeling he was experiencing during that time. Maybe desperation? Helplessness? Inui furrowed his eyebrows and wrote quickly. Izuku didn't like when he wrote things down. He knew that he had to do that, but it made Izuku feel like something was wrong with him and that he was being picked apart. That must have been difficult for you to go through at such a young age. Did you feel torn between the two? Like you had to choose? Inui asked, setting down his notebook for a second to show he was listening. The word Izuku was looking for was despair. Izuku nodded. I did, but my father didn't really give me a choice. He left one night and fled to America. I felt abandoned. I thought that maybe since my dad left, that things would get better. Izuku paused, feeling tears brim his eyes from the thought of remembering what happened. My mom drank a lot and started bringing men home every night. It was scary. Izuku mumbled, gripping his hands around his knees tighter and his wings closing around him to create a safety blanket almost. Inui furrowed his eyebrows and leaned forward slightly, his face covered in concern. Scary in what way, pup? It's important for me to understand so I can help you. Inui explained. Izuku sniffled, itching his forearm with his talons. He would use his knuckles instead, like Aizawa told him to do so he didn't hurt himself, but Izuku wasn't thinking right now. They would, come into my room at night, my mom would show them my room and Izuku trailed off, his scratching becoming feverish. They touched me. They used me for their disgusting desires. Izuku sobbed out. Inui got out of his chair to gently grab Izuku's hands to prevent himself from hurting himself more. One hand holding onto Izuku while he grabbed some band-aids, either the other. He began to place the band-aids on his arms, which Izuku didn't know he accidentally ended up cutting into with his sharp nails. The band-aids had smiley faces on them and childish designs. Izuku felt slightly better looking at the vibrant colors. Izuku, what you went through was very wrong. I am so sorry that you had to go through that at such a young age. No child should ever go through what you did. The hero said in a hushed tone, a growl ripping through his throat. He muffled them in an attempt to not scare the young child. I'm sorry if my growling scares you, pup. When I feel strong emotions, sometimes I can't control it. Inui explains. Do you feel comfortable talking more about that time? Or would you rather talk about something else, Izuku? He asked, his demeanor gentle and non-threatening. I'm fine continuing to talk about it. Izuku sniffled, knowing that things won't get better if he kept them bottled up. Okay, you are very strong, Izuku. Do you mind me asking when the last time your mother brought a man home? Inui asked, abandoning his seat across from Izuku to sit next to him at the other end of the couch. Izuku rested his back against the armrest, curling into the corner and directing his body towards the hero. I think a couple days before Zawa saved me. He mumbled, sniffling, his nose was runny and his eyes were burning from the tears. Inui frowned. Have you told Aizawa and Yamada about this yet, pup? He said, writing down in his notebook again. Izuku shrugs, not yet. I don't want them to think I'm weak or that I'm not grateful for everything they've done for me. I don't want to be a bother. Izuku croaks. You're not a bother, Izuku. Your experiences and feelings are valid and it's important to talk about them. Aizawa and Hisashi care about you deeply. Talking about your pain doesn't make you weak, Izuku. In fact, it takes a lot of strength to face these difficult memories. And being grateful doesn't mean you can't also struggle. It's okay to have both feelings, Inui explained softly. Izuku cried at his words. He wished he heard that many years ago, that there are people who care about him, and that it's okay to not be okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm still that scared kid, hiding from everything, Izuku admits, trailing his fingers around the edges of the band-aids now cluttered on his forearm. It's perfectly okay to feel that way. Healing is a journey, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. Remember, you're not alone in this. You have people who care about you, and I'm here to support you too. How do you feel about sharing some of these thoughts with Aizawa and Yamada? They might surprise you with how understanding they can be. Inui tells him. Izuku sniffles and wipes his eyes. Yeah, that sounds good. Great, we will take it one step at a time. You're doing really well, Izuku. You're stronger than you think. I'm proud of you for expressing how you feel. Inui smiles gently. Have you seen my capture scarf? Aizawa asked his husband, who also was digging through their closet. No, I haven't, and I can't find my jacket for my hero costume. Yamada mumbles, let's check Izuku's closet, maybe we accidentally hung up our clothes in there when we did laundry last. He said, turning around to face Aizawa. Aizawa nodded, going to head to Izuku's room. When they opened Izuku's closet, they didn't expect there to be a small ring of clothes in the corner. Aizawa hums, bending down to grab his scarf that was very intricately wrapped around the edge. Huh. Yamada hums, is this a nest? Is. Aizawa wraps his scarf back around his neck casually. I believe so, I don't know why we have never thought about this, Aizawa says nonchalantly. What do you mean? Yamada says, turning to face Aizawa. Well, if you think about it, the kid does have an avian quirk. Usually mutant quirks that are animal-based are also connected to instincts. If I remember correctly, fledglings stay nested with their parents up until they are nearly adults. Izuku probably just wanted our sense next to him. Aizawa explained. Ah, that makes sense. Maybe we could take the kiddo to a store that specializes in avian quirks. I think they make nest-like beds to create more enrichment. Hizashi says, opening his phone to look up the store. We should probably get Izuku his own phone as well. Yamada hums, gasping in excitement. Why don't we go get this stuff done while he's in therapy, so he can come home to a surprise? He says excitedly. Good idea. Aizawa agrees, his expression softening. It might help him feel more secure. And the phone will help him feel more connected to us, Yamada adds, already scrolling through his phone to find a nearby store that specializes in avian quirks. All right, let's head out then, Aizawa says, standing up and heading towards the door. We can check a few places and see what we can find. Perfect, Yamada replies, grabbing his keys. I can't wait to see his face when he comes home. They head out the door and get into the car, Yamada driving due to Aizawa's reckless driving skills. The store is filled with various items tailored to different bird-related quirks, from nest-like beds to blankets and pillows designed for nesting. Aizawa and Yamada walk through the aisles, carefully selecting items that they think Izuku will like. Can I help you find anything? A friendly store clerk asks, noticing their interest in the nesting supplies. Yes, actually, Yamada replies. We're looking for a nest-like bed and maybe some other items that might help our kid feel more comfortable. He has an avian quirk and we want to create a safe, nurturing environment for him. Yamada explains. Aizawa smiles subtly after hearing him call Izuku their kid. Of course, the clerk smiles. We have a variety of nest beds over here. They're designed to mimic the natural environment and provide a sense of security. That sounds perfect, Aizawa says, examining one of the beds. We'll take this one. They gather a few more items, including some pillows and blankets, and head to the checkout. As they leave the store, Yamada is still excitedly discussing their plans. This is going to be so great for him. I can't wait to see his reaction. Me too, Aizawa agrees, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Izuku returns home from his therapy session with Hound Dog, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. As he walks through the door after Nedza dropped him off, he notices Aizawa and Yamada waiting for him with eager expressions. Welcome home, kiddo. Yamada says brightly. We have a surprise for you. A surprise? Izuku asks, curiosity piqued. Come and see, Aizawa gestures towards his room. Izuku follows them to his room, where he finds the new nest bed and various other items arranged neatly. His eyes widen in surprise and gratitude, smelling the scent of Aizawa and Yamada coming from his new bed. You did this? For me? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Of course, we want you to feel comfortable and safe, Yamada says, wrapping an arm around Izuku's shoulders. We noticed you've been creating a nest with our clothes, Aizawa explains. We thought this might be better for you. And we also got you a phone, so you can always reach us if you need to. Tears well up in Izuku's eyes as he looks at the nest bed, the phone, and then back at his guardians. Thank you, he says, his voice thick with emotion. This means so much to me. You're welcome, Izuku, Yamada says, giving him a gentle squeeze. You're part of our family now, and we love you. Always, Aizawa adds, his voice steady and reassuring. Izuku smiles, feeling a warmth spread through him. For the first time in a long while, he feels truly at home. The sun is beginning to set, casting a warm glow through the windows. Aizawa is sitting on the couch, grading papers, while Yamada is in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Izuku sat on the couch nestled into the corner, his laptop in his hands. Dinner's almost ready. Just a few more minutes. Yamada yells from inside the kitchen. Izuku hums, "Okay, Papa," he replies absent-mindedly, then freezes, realizing what he just said. Aizawa looks up from his papers, his eyes meeting Izuku's. Yamada pauses in the kitchen, a soft smile spreading across his face. "What did you say, kiddo?" he asks gently, walking into the living room. Izuku blushed in embarrassment. "I called you Papa. Is that okay?" Yamada kneels in front of the couch where Izuku sat. "More than okay, Izuku. It means the world to me." He smiles, tears brimming his eyes. Aizawa sets his papers aside and looked at Izuku with a soft smile, his usually stoic face showing a hint of emotion. Aizawa hums, "And what about me, Izuku?" he asks softly. Izuku takes a deep breath, looking from Yamada to Aizawa. "I was going to call you Dad," he says, his voice wavering with uncertainty. Aizawa lips tug more into a noticeable smile. "I'd be honored, Izuku," he said, putting a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Tears well up in Izuku's eyes as he looks at the two men who have become his family. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you for everything." Yamada pulled the kid into his arms, holding him in a tight embrace. "We're the ones who should be thanking you, Birdie. You've brought so much joy into our lives." Aizawa wrapped his arms around them both, joining in on the hug. "We're proud of you, Izuku. You've come so far and we're here for you always," he mumbled, his head on top of the kid's curly hair. Izuku feels a deep sense of belonging and love as he's held by his two guardians. For the first time, he feels like he truly has a family, a place where he's safe and loved unconditionally. Yamada pulled back slightly, bringing a hand up to wipe away the tears. "All right, how about we finish this dinner and then maybe watch a movie together? Sound good?" he asked, a soft smile on his face. Izuku sniffles. "Yeah, that sounds perfect, Papa." He smiled. The three of them head to the kitchen, the warmth of their bond filling the home with a sense of peace and happiness. Izuku was smart. He had the intelligence of a 7th grader at the age of 9. Aizawa and Hisashi both knew that. What they didn't know is how well Izuku retains information and has a very photogenic memory. "Hey, Dad," Izuku says, looking up from his laptop. He sat on the couch next to Aizawa, curled up in the corner while Aizawa would work on grading schoolwork and some documents from the police station. "Yes, kiddo?" Aizawa responds in a gruff, tired tone. To anyone else he may sound rude or uninterested, but Izuku has known him long enough to be able to read the man's tones. "I can't find any more homework for my classes," Izuku states, adjusting his screen to show his dad. "Does that mean I finished 7th grade?" Aizawa hums, reading the screen. "Let me email your teachers and see what they say." "All right, kiddo," he says. Izuku was only 9, turning 10 in a week. How could he have finished the 6th grade already? Izuku nods, going back to searching for any homework while Aizawa starts to type out an email on his laptop to the kid's advisor. Turns out, Izuku did indeed finish 7th grade. The teachers praised his work, saying that he was an incredibly smart kid. Once Izuku found this out, his smile was blinding. He seemed so proud of himself. Aizawa smiled softly and ruffled the kid's black curly hair. "Good job, Izuku. Proud of you. Do you feel all right starting in the 7th grade? Your teachers said they are fine releasing the work tomorrow for you to begin the courses." Aizawa asked. His voice was soft and had a hint of pride in it. He was so proud of his son. He wasn't even 10 yet and he would already be starting 7th grade. "Yeah, I do. Do you think I could graduate early?" Izuku asked curiously while closing his laptop screen. "With the rate you're going, it's a high possibility," Aizawa responded, going back to his work in front of him. Hisashi was going to be so proud. Izuku sat at his desk, the glow of the computer screen illuminating his focused expression. He typed the last answer to his math assignment and hit submit. A notification popped up, congratulating him on another perfect score. Izuku smiled to himself. He was proud of his progress, skipping grades and excelling in his studies. But as much as he enjoyed learning, there was another part of his day he looked forward to even more. I wonder if we are still going to UE today? Pops said he would help train me with flying. Izuku closed his laptop and stretched, feeling the slight stiffness in his wings from sitting too long. He stood up, pushing his chair back and headed towards the door. The hallway outside his room was filled with the afternoon light, and he could hear the distant sound of Aizawa and Hisashi talking in the background. "Is that you I hear, little listener?" Hisashi said from inside the kitchen. "Yeah, it's me. Pops." Izuku called out, walking into the living room where Shoyuda was laying down. "You still up for going to UE to practice flying?" Shoyuda asked, opening one of his eyes to look at him. Izuku nodded. "Yeah. I'm so excited." Izuku smiled. "Alright, go get changed, kiddo, then we can leave." "Alright," Aizawa said, shooing him off to his room to get dressed into something more suitable for training rather than pajama pants and a gang orca shirt. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the UE gymnasium. The expansive space, typically buzzing with students honing their quirks, was now tranquil, echoing the soft rustle of wings and the faint hum of anticipation. Aizawa Shoyuda, clad in his usual black hero outfit, stood beside his son, Izuku, whose emerald eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. His wings, usually tucked tightly against his back, fluttered slightly, reflecting his emotions. Hisashi Yamada, in his hero persona, Present Mic, watched from a distance, a proud smile spreading across his face. Today was a momentous day. It was the day their son would learn to embrace the sky. Aizawa knelt to meet Izuku's gaze, his voice gentle but firm. "Izuku, remember, it's all about trust. Trust in your wings, trust in yourself. You've got this." Izuku nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. His wings, large and powerful, felt heavy with the weight of his past and the potential of his future. He had never flown before, his mother having forbidden it, but today, with his father's guidance, he would soar. They started with stretching exercises on his wings, raising them and extending them to get rid of any stiffness, going through the motions of flapping his wings slowly to get used to the motion, before they finally tried to get him off the ground. "Alright, kiddo," Aizawa said, "remember that I'm here to catch you if you fall, and if you do, we can keep trying again. It's okay if you can't do it the first time," Aizawa explained, kneeling down slightly to Izuku's height. Izuku stood on a foam mat that would break his fall if he did end up crashing. "Okay, I'm ready," he said excitedly. Izuku closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. His wings extended fully, their impressive span shimmering in the sunlight. Slowly, he began to flap them, feeling the air resistance, the way his muscles strained and then relaxed. The ground seemed to waver beneath him as he lifted off, ever so slightly. "That's it," Aizawa encouraged. "You're doing great." Izuku's heart pounded in his chest, the thrill of defying gravity coursing through him. He wobbled, nearly losing his balance, but Aizawa was there, steadying him with a reassuring hand. "Focus on your center of gravity," Aizawa advised. "Keep your core strong and your mind clear." Izuku nodded, concentrating harder. He flapped his wings with more confidence, rising higher. The sensation was exhilarating, the gym falling away beneath him. He was flying, truly flying. A laugh bubbled up from Izuku's chest, pure and joyous. "Dad, I'm doing it," he called out, his voice echoing through the gym. Aizawa's usually stoic expression softened, pride and love shining in his eyes. "I knew you could, Izuku." Hisashi, unable to contain his excitement, cheered from the sidelines. "That's our boy. You're doing amazing, Izuku." Izuku chirped. With each flap, Izuku's movements became more fluid, more natural. He began to do small circles to get used to the feeling of flying. He could see his parents below him watching him with pride. After what felt like an eternity and a heartbeat all at once, Izuku descended, landing gracefully beside his father. His chest heaved with exertion, but his face was alight with triumph. Aizawa pulled him into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. Izuku clung to his father, tears of joy streaming down his cheeks. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for believing in me." Hisashi joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them in a warm, familial embrace. "This is just the beginning, Izuku. There's so much more for you to explore." Izuku nodded, feeling the strength of his family around him. For the first time in his life, he felt truly free, and as they stood there, in the heart of the gymnasium, the world seemed full of endless possibilities, the sky no longer a limit but an invitation. "Izuku's birthday is tomorrow," Aizawa stated quietly to Hisashi. "I know, I was planning on inviting the Bakugos over to visit with the little listener and obviously Namuri." Hisashi explained, "I was going to make him Katsudon, but he told me that having Katsudon reminded him of his mom too much, so I thought the next best thing was yakitori since he really enjoyed it that one time we made it. Have you figured out what to get him yet?" Hisashi asked, looking over at his husband with curious eyes. "I was planning on going out today to the mall to find what I was looking for, if you'd like to join me. I was going to find some journaling supplies." The kid went through his notebooks that we bought him already, and after seeing all the notebooks he filled out from his previous home, I was thinking of getting him a few nice quality notebooks to write his analysis in. Aizawa responded, itching his chin in thought. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. I wanted to stop by the Hero merch store at the mall anyways to pick up some merchandise for him." Hisashi hummed, "Let me go get ready and then we can head out. Izuku will be home from his lessons with Nedzu in a couple hours, so we have some time." Hisashi headed to their shared bedroom to get ready while Aizawa sat on the couch staring off in thought. Might as well message Mitsuki to invite her and her family over. Aizawa thought, sighing, "This is going to be a busy day." Izuku woke up to BSRD and Dumpster, the two family cats, laying beside him in his nest. Their purrs were soothing to him. Izuku chirped in delight, raising his hand to pet them. "Knock knock. Are you awake, Aizu?" Aizawa's gruff voice came from the other side of the door. "I'm up, Dad." "You can come in," Izuku yelled out, the cats scrambling to go greet Aizawa at the door. The door creaked open and his dad walked in, sitting at the edge of Izuku's round-shaped bed. "Happy birthday, Izuku," Aizawa said, ruffling the kid's hair. Izuku looked confused, before a shocked expression spread across his face. "It's my birthday?" Izuku asked with a dumbfounded face. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, kid. It's your 10th birthday. It's July 15th, did you forget?" Aizawa asked, tilting his head in curiosity. Izuku hummed, "It's July already?" Izuku thought, "I must have lost track of time. What are we doing today?" Izuku asked, sitting up. Aizawa smiled softly, "Why don't you come to the dining room to have breakfast with us, then we will tell you all about today's plans." Izuku nodded, and they both headed out of his room to the dining room. Izuku dressed in his pajamas and Aizawa the same. Izuku smiled brightly at seeing the table set with pancakes, strawberries, whipped cream, and syrup. His papa was flipping pancakes filled with what looked like blueberries on the stove. From what it looked like, he didn't have his hearing aids in. Izuku walked up to him and approached him from his side to not startle him. Hisashi looked over with a bright smile on his face when he saw Izuku. "Good morning, my little bird," Hisashi exclaimed, his voice louder than usual, not knowing how loud he's talking. "Good morning, Papa," Izuku signed, making the sign for loud and Dad when signing Papa. Hisashi ruffled his hair and kissed his forehead. "Could you grab my hearing aids for me, Sho?" "They're where they usually are," Hisashi asked, looking at a tired Shoyuta. Aizawa nodded and retreated to their bedroom to grab them. "Why don't you go sit down, kiddo? I'll join you in a second when I'm done with this last pancake," Hisashi said, a soft expression on his face. Izuku nodded, going to sit down in his designated chair at the table and practically drooling at the sight of the pancakes. Aizawa soon returned and handed Hisashi his hearing aids, which Hisashi took gratefully and put them in, adjusting them. While Hisashi began to plate the remaining pancakes he finished, Aizawa began to feed the two cats. So, Izuku, Aizawa started, we thought it would be nice to invite the Bakugos and Nimuri over for dinner tonight and we could spend the day together as a family, Aizawa explained as he sat down at the table while Hizashi finally finished setting the table. That sounds really nice. I didn't really celebrate my birthday much back with my mother. This is a nice change, Izuku mumbled, itching his arm with his knuckles. Hizashi and Shuda's faces softened. Well, little listener, this will be the best birthday ever. Take your medication first before you go ahead and fill your plate while we finish explaining what we want to do for you, alright? Hizashi exclaimed, and Izuku didn't waste a second with piling his plate intricately with pancakes, but it couldn't just be slapped onto his plate, it had to be a certain order. Pancake, whipped cream, strawberries, pancake whipped cream, repeat, and then took his medication for his heart that was already on the table next to a glass of water. Aizawa suggested we could bring you out flying today as well to Yui, Inui and Nedzu would like to see you today, and then we could come back home and we would like to give you our presents before everyone arrives, we thought you would like the privacy. Hizashi said, also starting to fill his plate, but with the blueberry pancakes. Izuku nodded in understanding and took a bite out of his food, eyes crinkling in delight at the taste of all the food. That's Sean's grat. Izuku muffled, his mouth full of food. Don't talk with food in your mouth, kid, you'll choke. I'd prefer not to have to do the Heimlich on your birthday, Aizawa states, a teasing tone in his voice. Izuku flushes in embarrassment and swallows his food. Sorry. I meant to say, that sounds great, Izuku repeats, going back to devouring his food in front of him. Alright, after we finish breakfast, why don't you go take a shower? Get dressed into something comfortable to fly in and we will head out. Sound good? Aizawa asks, awaiting Izuku's reply before he also began to eat. Umph-K. Izuku muffled once again, talking with his mouth full, coughing when he felt a piece of strawberry get stuck in his throat. Izuku, what did Sho just tell you dash? After escaping death from a strawberry, Izuku hopped into the shower, scrubbing his skin under the hot shower and washing his wings with his feather wash specifically for his feathers. Once he got out of the shower, he dried himself off and got dressed into some athletic clothes, cringing when he felt his wet wings get his clothes wet while he adjusted them into the slits on the back of his shirt. He walked out the bathroom with a towel in his hands to the living room, searching for Hizashi to help dry his wings and do his hair for him, which had started to grow longer. Need help with your wings and hair, kiddo? Hizashi asked once he saw Izuku. Izuku nodded and plopped onto the floor in front of the couch where his papa was sitting. Aizawa soon joined them, sitting down next to Hizashi and taking the towel to help dry off Izuku's wings and preen any unkempt feathers. Izuku hummed, feeling relaxed and safe in the hands of his dad and pops. They soon left, after Izuku's curls were det-angled and his wings dry and clean. After Izuku's flying session, which ended up with him being able to do circles around the gymnasium, they headed to Nedzu's office, where both himself and Inui were waiting for him. Aizawa knocked on Nedzu's door once before walking in, not bothering to make himself known. Ah, little Izuku, happy birthday. So wonderful to see you, Kit. Nedzu says in a cheery voice. He was sitting at his desk, while Inui was sitting on the couch off to the side. He probably finds those chairs uncomfortable too, Izuku thinks. Hi Nedzu-san. Hi Inui-san. Izuku says excitedly, beginning to tell them all about the events of today so far, eating his favorite breakfast and then going flying. Inui chuckles in an affectionate tone. Seems like you had a wonderful morning, pup, you'll have to tell me more about it at our next session. He says, I have a gift for you, Izuku, Inui rumbles, digging through his pocket to find the gift. Izuku's head tilts in curiosity, but his eyes widen in surprise when he saw a beautiful stone in the palms of the dog-like man's hands. Pause. This is called Tiger's Eye. I found it while hiking the other day and thought you would absolutely love it, he says, opening his palm to place it into Izuku's. Izuku cradled the rock in his palms like it was the most fragile thing ever. It's pretty. Izuku coos, bringing the crystal closer to his face to inspect it better. I like it a lot, thank you Inui. It means a lot to me. Izuku exclaims, a bright smile on his face. He turns to Aizawa, holding up the rock to him. I don't have any pockets or room for me to carry this and I don't want to lose it, Can you hold on to it for me please, Dad? Izuku asks, his voice suddenly serious. He couldn't lose the first birthday gift he had gotten in a long time. Aizawa nods, grabbing the stone delicately and sliding it into his pocket, shooting a grateful expression to Inui. I have a gift for you as well. Kit, would you like to come and see? Netsu asked, beckoning Izuku to come closer. Izuku shuffled closer. Netsu held out a flash drive and handed it to the kid. This flash drive has battles of heroes that the media has not seen. I believe you would benefit from this with your analysis. Netsu said in his usual cheery tone, shifting his gaze over to Hisashi and Shoyuta. And do not fret, there is no gore or anything children cannot see. He assured Shoyuta and Hisashi. Thank you so much, Netsu. Next time we have our lessons, I'll tell you everything I notice. Izuku says excitedly, handing the flash drive to Aizawa again to hold on to. Netsu nodded and smiled, before politely telling them that he must get back to work. The family left, saying their goodbyes and headed home. They arrived home, Izuku's wings feeling sore from exerting them with flying, but before he could go change into something more casual, Hisashi and Aizawa sat him down in the living room. Hisashi handed Aizawa a box, which Aizawa handed to Izuku, was a sleek black box with a red ribbon. Izuku's hands trembled slightly as he untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside was a set of official documents, along with a brand new identification card. His eyes widened as he read the name on the card, Izuku Aizawa. Happy birthday, Izuku, Aizawa said, his voice filled with emotion. We thought since you didn't feel comfortable with your old family name, that you could inherit mine, legally. And these, he pointed to the papers, are the official adoption papers. The only thing missing is your signature. Tears welled up in Izuku's eyes as he looked up at his father's. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hisashi pulled him into a warm embrace. You don't have to say anything, Izuku. We're the lucky ones to have you. Izuku signed his name on the paper, finalizing the paperwork. The only thing needed to be done was to drop it off at Tsukachi's office. He was in every way possible, their kid now. Nothing could change that. He was now Izuku Aizawa. The next presents given to him by his fathers were a very nice-looking set of journals, high-quality pens and pencils, along with several supplies for journaling to fill the pages. Hisashi got him a bunch of different hero merch, some new heroes that debuted recently and some older heroes as well. Izuku felt overjoyed, excited to use all of his new journaling supplies while analyzing the videos that Netsu gave him, and wear all the hero merch that his papa got him. Hisashi began cooking dinner while Izuku finished getting dressed, awaiting the arrival of the Bakugos and Nemuri. I don't think I've ever been so excited before, Izuku thinks, putting on one of his favorite hoodies and sliding his wings into the holes. Scrunching his face when his wings feel itchy, ruffling them up seems to get rid of the itch for now. Izuku exited his room smiling when he saw Hisashi talking to Mitsuki in the living room. He practically barrels into Bakugo when he sees him. Kaken! Izuku exclaimed, wrapping his wings and arms around his childhood friend tightly. Bakugo grunts, clearly not expecting his friend to tackle him. Yeah, I missed you too or whatever, nerd. Bakugo grumbles, ruffling Izuku's wild curls that were tamed this morning but now just look like a bush. Hisashi and Mitsuki shoo them off to Izuku's room while they wait for Nemuri to arrive. Izuku grabs Bakugo's hand and leads him to his room to show all his hero merch. Bakugo doesn't look impressed, but Izuku knows that deep down his inner fanboy is screaming. Izuku keeps itching, especially at the base of his wings. Bakugo seems to notice this. Oi, why are you itchin' so much? You going into molt? Bakugo asks, his tone gruff but a hint of concern laced his voice. Suddenly everything made sense. It was the middle of summer, he was in his late childhood years, and his feathers had been looking duller lately. You're right, Kaken. I don't know why I didn't realize that. I can't even remember the last time I molted. I think I was. Izuku leads off. You were 7, dus. Bakugo knocks his hand against Izuku's skull lightly. Have you told your hobo-looking dad about that yet? He asks. Izuku shook his head, which Bakugo scoffed at. Dummy. I would think even you would know to tell them about your quirk in detail considering how much you write about quirks. He grunted, crossing his arms. Izuku nodded. I guess I've just been too busy to explain, Izuku lied. I'm just scared they'll hate me or get rid of me when they find out more about my animalistic side. Izuku thinks. Bakugo stares at him. You're lying, but whatever. Here's your dumb gift, happy birthday or whatever. Bakugo holds out a small box, avoiding Izuku's eyes. Izuku grabs the box, opening it to find a limited edition All Might figure. Izuku gasps, Kaken, they only sold like 100 of these. How did you get your hands on one? Izuku exclaims, his wings fluffing up and fluttering in joy. He chirps as he looks at it in closer detail before putting it on display with his other hero figurines. I have my ways, now shut up and show me your recent notebooks, Bakugo said, his cheeks flushing slightly red. Izuku's birthday went well. Nemuri arrived greeting them all and actually getting along really well with Mitsuki. They ate Izuku's new favorite meal, yakitori, and opened gifts from Nemuri and Mitsuki. Nemuri got him several soft blankets to add to his nest that had her scent on them, along with some rock bracelets. Mitsuki got him some gloves that she designed from her clothing company that covered his claws to prevent them from scratching anything or harming himself or others, along with some more journaling supplies. Soon enough, everybody left, leaving just Izuku and his dads. They ended the night watching a documentary cuddled up on the couch. Izuku has never felt so safe in his life. He couldn't ask for a better family. Therapy had been going well for Izuku, but he still hasn't told his parents about what happened. Inui tries to encourage him to open up to his parents more, but it's difficult to bring up those memories again. It's normal to feel scared and nervous about opening up to your parents about very traumatic memories. Hound Dog had said. Izuku knows he should tell his parents. They could help him. They could find the people who ruined his innocence. Izuku sat in the living room in his usual spot. He had graduated middle school a couple weeks ago. His parents were surprised when he managed to finish middle school within the span of 3 months of living with them, but with how Izuku retains information and has a photogenic memory, it was a breeze for him. Aizawa sat next to him, grading homework for the second years, occasionally mumbling under his breath about how he couldn't believe how stupid some of his students were. Hizashi was reading an English book next to Aizawa. Izuku probably shouldn't tell them now when they are both busy, but he knows he should when he has a small amount of courage. Papa, Dad, can we talk about something? Izuku asked, fiddling with his thumbs. His voice was quiet and hushed. Aizawa looked over at him. Once noticing his nervousness, he closed his laptop and set it down on the coffee table to give Izuku his full attention. Hizashi didn't have his hearing aids in, so after Aizawa got his attention and Hizashi put them back in, the attention was on him. What's up, kiddo? You alright? His papa asked. Izuku shrugged, suddenly feeling very uncomfortable. Izuku, Aizawa said, his voice wavering with concern. Inui said I should tell you this back when I had my first session, but I've been too scared too. Izuku trailed off. Zu, you're worrying us, what's going on? Hizashi asked, his eyebrows furrowed. Back when I lived with my mom, she would bring over really weird men over at night after she was back from the bar and… Izuku mumbled. Aizawa straightened his back, and by working in the underground hero industry, he knew what was coming. He could feel the paternal rage building inside of him. When the next word spilled out of Izuku's mouth, Hizashi broke down in tears, enveloping his son in a tight embrace, which Izuku took gratefully, his own tears spilling down his cheeks. Aizawa sat frozen. Dangerous thoughts filled his mind. Murder is illegal, Aizawa repeated over and over in his head, trying to get rid of those murderous thoughts. My baby, my baby. Hizashi sobbed repeatedly, rocking his son back and forth in his arms. Aizawa didn't know what to do. Well, he did, he should murder those pigs, but that was illegal. Izuku, thank you for telling us. I'm so incredibly proud of you for opening up about this. You are safe with us and we would never let anyone hurt you, but I need to know, how many times did this happen? Aizawa said carefully, trying to keep his voice calm and not show the anger that he is currently feeling. Izuku sniffles, I think 8 times. Izuku mumbled, burying his head into the crook of Hizashi's neck. Aizawa's heart broke. Okay, thank you for telling me. Is it okay if I make a couple calls? Or would you like me to stay with you? Yes. That's okay. Izuku said, his wings tightening around him to look like he was cocooned. Aizawa nodded, patting his head before pressing a kiss to the crown of his head. He walked into his bedroom and took a couple deep breaths before first dialing Nemuri to invite her over. Izuku needed all the support he could get, and knowing Nemuri, she would shower the kid in affection. Nemuri immediately agreed. The sounds of her heels clacking and her car keys jingling in her hands showed her urgency to get over there. The next phone call was Tsukachi. He needed to put these men behind bars before he would end up committing genocide. Tsukachi speaking, a tired voice said from the other end of the line. It's Eraser. Listen, I need you to open up a case. Izuku just admitted that he was sexually assaulted. We need to identify fingerprints from the Midoriya house and check surveillance cameras. Aizawa explained, his voice no longer calm and now full of rage. The line was silent before a loud sigh came from the other end. Sheet. Okay, I'll start investigating. I do need you to bring Izuku into the station for questioning. I'm not accusing the kid of lying, but I need the documentation. He replied, now sounding more awake. Understood, I'll bring Izuku over once we get him to calm down some more. Thank you, Tsukachi. The call ends and he makes the last call, Nedzu. Nedzu has eyes everywhere, and with how he seems to be protective to Izuku, he would be a great help. Aizawa-kun, to what do I owe the pleasure? Nedzu's cheery voice sounds from the speaker of his phone. Aizawa explained the situation, and like how Tsukachi reacted, Nedzu was quiet for a second. I see. Nedzu's voice was no longer cheery, it was monotone. Thank you for informing me, Aizawa. I do believe I have some pigs I have to butcher. Goodbye. The line cuts. Aizawa thinks. He knows that he can't do anything such as murder, but Nedzu on the other hand. He could find a way. Aizawa ran a hand over his face, pinching the bridge of his nose. He heard the front door open, the sound of shoes getting thrown off and hurried steps towards the living room. Aizawa left his bedroom, heading towards the commotion. Hey Birdie. How are you doing? Nemuri's smooth voice was heard from the living room. Aizawa's eyes softened, seeing Nemuri kneeled in front of Hisashi and Izuku. Izuku shrugs, tears no longer trailing down his face. His cheeks were red and his eyes were puffy. That's okay. Why don't we get some blankets together and create a little nest for us and watch a movie? How does that sound? Nemuri asked. Izuku nodded, unraveling himself from Hisashi and stood up to grab Nemuri's hand to lead her to his room. Aizawa sat down next to Hisashi and embraced him. Hisashi broke down again. He's just a child, he should have never gone through that, his husband mumbled. Aizawa sighed. I know, he said, running his hands through Hisashi's blonde hair. Nemuri and Izuku soon returned with their arms full of blankets and pillows, and began to intricately create a makeshift nest big enough to fit the four of them. Izuku laid in the middle, his wings wrapping around the three around him. Nemuri turned on a bird documentary, which the four of them watched until Izuku fell asleep. Hands, all he felt were hands. His body was just a canvas full of other people's sick desires. He could hear the man's words in his ears. The game that he promised would be fun would only be a world of hurt. Good boy, is what each man has said every time. He didn't feel like a good boy, he felt disgusted, he felt used. After the first time, Izuku learned to dissociate, to try and disappear into a different world, to try and not think about the pain and burning, to try and not to think about the feeling of hands roaming. He remembered the last time a man came into his room. At that point he was numb to it. He didn't scream or cry for his mommy like he did the first couple of times. He knew his mommy wouldn't come and help him. He knew that his mommy was too busy being drunk and sleeping with the other man she brought home with her. Mommy didn't care. Mommy said that the men would give her money to go into his room. She knew what the men would do, but she didn't care. She just wanted more money to buy more booze. Izuku knew this was a dream. He knew that the man in front of him wasn't real. But can you blame him for being scared? Since living with his dads, he thought he was safe. He hadn't even had any nightmares. Even though it was a dream, he could feel the hands as if they were real. Izuku. He could hear the man's disgusting voice. Izuku. He could feel the ripping pain. Izuku. He awoke, sitting up quickly in shock. He jolted away from the hands that held him. "Get off of me," Izuku mumbled, tears clouding his vision. "Izu, it's just me," a gruff voice spoke out. "Zawa." Izuku whispered, trying to see the figure through his blurry vision. "Yeah, kiddo, it's me. You had a nightmare. Do you want to talk about it?" Izawa asked. As much as he so badly wanted to hold his son, he knew right now would not be a good time to. "No," Izuku said, "I don't." "That's okay, kid. Are you okay with touch right now?" he asked, his voice soft. Izuku nodded, and Izawa smiled, bringing up his hands to wipe away the child's tears. "Where's Papa and Auntie?" Izuku asked, leaning into his touch. "Zashi and Nem are in the kitchen preparing something to eat," Izawa responded. "After we eat, we need to go to the station for some questioning, but we will be there the whole time with you, okay? We need to find the people responsible." Izuku hummed, not really wanting to relive those memories again, but nodded and got up, stretching his wings. "Okay," he murmured, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes and headed towards the kitchen. Izuku made his way to the kitchen, the familiar sounds and smells comforting him. Hizashi was bustling around, preparing breakfast with a determined expression, while Namuri set the table, her movements graceful and efficient. "Morning, sleepyhead," Hizashi greeted, his tone light but eyes filled with concern. "We've got your favorite pancakes." Izuku managed a small smile. "Thanks, Papa." Namuri walked over, ruffling his hair gently. "Hey there, champ. You doing okay?" Izuku nodded, appreciating their efforts to keep things normal. He sat down at the table, and Izawa joined him, subtly keeping an eye on his son. The breakfast was a quiet affair, everyone trying to act natural but clearly anxious about the upcoming questioning. When they finished eating, Izawa and Hizashi exchanged a glance, silently communicating their readiness. "All right, Izuku," Izawa said softly. "It's time to head to the station. Remember, we're right here with you, and you don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." Izuku took a deep breath, his small hands trembling slightly. "Let's go." They arrived at the police station, the atmosphere noticeably more tense. Tsukachi greeted them at the entrance, his expression serious but kind. "Hey, Izuku," Tsukachi said gently. "We'll take this at your pace, all right?" Izuku nodded, holding tightly to Aizawa's hand. They were led to a quiet, private room designed to be as non-intimidating as possible. The walls were painted in calming colors, and comfortable chairs were arranged around a low table. Namuri stayed just outside the door, offering silent support while giving them some space. Hizashi and Aizawa sat on either side of Izuku, their presence a constant reassurance. Tsukachi took a seat across from Izuku, his demeanor calm and patient. "Izuku, I'm going to ask you a few questions. You only need to answer what you're comfortable with, okay? I'll need vocal affirmation." Izuku swallowed hard but nodded. "Okay." Tsukachi clicked the recorder and stated the date and time. "All right, Izuku. Can you tell me about the men who came to your apartment?" Tsukachi asked, his voice gentle. Izuku hesitated, his wings twitching slightly. He glanced at Aizawa and Hizashi, drawing strength from their supportive gazes. They were friends of my mom," Izuku began, his voice barely above a whisper. "She would bring them over, and they would. They would hurt me." Tsukachi nodded, his expression remaining calm. "Do you remember anything specific about them? Names, appearances, anything at all?" Izuku closed his eyes, trying to recall the details. There was one man. He had a scar on his face. He called himself Ryu. Another one always wore a leather jacket. I don't know their real names. Tsukachi noted down the information, his manner encouraging but unpressing. "You're doing great, Izuku. Can you tell me anything else? Anything that stood out to you?" Izuku thought for a moment. One of them had a tattoo on his arm. It looked like a dragon. And another one had a ring with a big red stone. "That's very helpful, Izuku. You're being very brave," Tsukachi said, his tone filled with genuine respect. "Do you feel okay to continue?" Izuku nodded, though his eyes were starting to glisten with tears. "Yes." "Did your mother ever say anything about these men? Did she know what they were doing?" Tsukachi asked carefully. Izuku's breath hitched. She knew. She told me to be good and do what they wanted. She said it was my fault if they got angry. Aizawa clenched his jaw, his hand tightening around Izuku's. Hisashi's eyes flashed with anger, but he kept his focus on comforting Izuku. Thank you, Izuku, Tsukachi said, his voice steady. That's all I need to ask for now. You've been very brave. Izuku nodded, his tears now falling freely. Aizawa and Hisashi immediately enveloped him in a protective embrace, their presence a fortress against the painful memories. We're proud of you, kiddo, Hisashi whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You did amazing. Tsukachi stood, giving them a moment of privacy. We'll take it from here. Thank you, Izuku. As they left the station, Izuku felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The hard part was over, now they just needed to find the people responsible. Nemuri decided to stay a couple nights, saying that it would be like a fun sleepover. Izuku didn't mind, he liked hanging out with his aunt. The next couple of days were rough. Aizawa thought it would help distract Izuku by bringing him out to fly more at Tui. Izuku appreciated it, flying never felt so freeing. 4 days after the questioning, Aizawa got a call. Eraserhead speaking. Aizawa responded, using his hero name due to his work phone being the one rung. It's Tsukachi, we found them. Apparently the people who assaulted Izuku were in a group. They are currently hiding out at a rundown warehouse. He can commence the operation tonight. Aizawa looked over to Hisashi and Nemuri, and nodded. Understood. We will meet there and I'll text you the coordinates. The next couple of hours, the 3 heroes prepared, getting into their gear and finalizing a plan. Hound Dog offered to watch Izuku, stating it would be good for him to have all the support he needs. Aizawa, Hisashi, and Nemuri gathered in the living room, their expressions serious and determined. Izuku sat on the couch, looking small and anxious. You're going to get them tonight, aren't you? Izuku asked quietly, his voice tinged with fear and hope. Aizawa knelt in front of him, his eyes gentle. Yes, Izuku. We're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else ever again. Will you be safe? Izuku's eyes were wide, filled with worry. Hisashi ruffled his hair. We'll be fine, kiddo. We're pros at this. And you'll be in good hands with Hound Dog. Nemuri gave him a reassuring smile. We've got this, Izuku. You just focus on being the amazing kid you are. Izuku nodded, his grip on Aizawa's hand tightening for a moment before he let go. Please be careful. With a final hug from each of them, Aizawa, Hisashi, and Nemuri left, heading to the rendezvous point. The air was tense with anticipation as they arrived at the warehouse, meeting Tsukachi and his team. The operation was meticulously planned, each hero knowing their role. As the clock struck 2200, they moved in, the element of surprise on their side. The warehouse was dimly lit, the shadows hiding the criminals who had caused so much pain. Aizawa led the charge, his capture weapon ready. Hisashi used his voice quirk to stun the criminals, while Nemuri's somnambulist quirk put others to sleep. Tsukachi's team moved in swiftly, apprehending the men one by one. The operation was over quickly, the criminals subdued and in custody. As they were led away, Aizawa felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. Izuku's tormentors were finally behind bars. They would never hurt his son again. Back at home, Hound Dog sat with Izuku, keeping him company. When the heroes returned, exhausted but victorious, Izuku ran to them, his wings fluttering anxiously. Did you get them? He asked, eyes wide with anticipation. Aizawa knelt down, pulling Izuku into a hug. Yes, we got them. They won't hurt anyone ever again. Izuku's relief was palpable, his tears falling freely as he clung to Aizawa. Hisashi and Nemuri joined the embrace, their presence a shield of love and protection. That night, for the first time in a long time, Izuku slept soundly, surrounded by the warmth of his family. The nightmare was over, and with his new family by his side, Izuku felt a sense of safety and hope. Izuku sat curled up in his nest-like bed, feathers scattered all around him. His wings, usually vibrant and full, were now dull and patchy, molting, leaving him feeling vulnerable. As he ran a hand over the soft blankets that smelled of home and safety, His thoughts drifted back to a time when this natural process was met with disgust and anger. His mother's voice echoed in his head, the harsh words still cutting through the peace he tried to hold onto. Izuku, this is fing disgusting. Pick this sheet up now. You're making a mess out of my house. A shudder ran down his spine, and he curled up tighter, trying to focus on the comforting sense of his new family. But the itching at the base of his wings was relentless, a constant reminder of his current state. The feathers falling off left him feeling exposed, and he hated it. Suddenly, a knock on his door broke through his thoughts, causing him to flinch. His wings twitched involuntarily, the sudden movement only worsening the itching. He groaned, feeling frustrated as the irritation that had just begun to subside flared up again. Izuku? You okay, bud? You haven't come out of your room all day. Is everything all right in there? Aizawa's voice came from outside the door, tinged with concern. Izuku huffed softly, burying his face deeper into his nest. I'm fine, Dad, he mumbled, though his voice was barely loud enough to carry through the door. He didn't want to worry them, but the truth was, he felt anything but fine. Being in molt made it nearly impossible to fly, and the growing new feathers were tender, leaving him feeling raw and defenseless. Is it all right if I come in to check on you? Aizawa's tone was gentle, coaxing, and it made Izuku's heart ache with the kindness he still wasn't entirely used to. Izuku hesitated. Trusting others with his vulnerabilities was something Inui Hound Dog had encouraged him to work on, but it was easier said than done. After a moment, he swallowed his nerves and agreed. You can come in. The door creaked open, and the light from the hallway spilled into the dark room, causing Izuku to squint. As his eyes adjusted, he saw the way Aizawa's expression softened, his gaze sweeping over the feathers littering the floor. Sheet Izuku, are you all right? Aizawa asked, making his way carefully to the edge of the nest and sitting down. His hand reached out to rub Izuku's shoulder in a comforting gesture, his touch grounding. I'm molting, Izuku murmured, his voice small as he shifted uncomfortably. The base of his wings itched again, the sensation of pins and needles making him wince. Aizawa nodded in understanding, his brow furrowing slightly. Why don't you come sit in the living room with us? Hizashi and I can help preen your feathers, then we'll run you a warm bath. How does that sound? Izuku looked up at his father, the suggestion so gentle, so caring, that it made his chest tighten. He hesitated, the remnants of his mother's harsh words making him question whether this kindness was something he deserved. You don't care about the mess it makes? His voice was a whisper, the vulnerability evident. Aizawa's response was immediate and firm. Not at all. Right now, I only care about your well-being. We can clean up later when you're feeling better. The sincerity in his father's voice made Izuku's heart swell with an unfamiliar warmth. It was a stark contrast to the coldness he'd grown up with. Slowly, he nodded, the beginnings of a small smile tugging at his lips. Yes, that sounds nice. With Aizawa's help, Izuku slowly extricated himself from his nest of blankets, his movements careful to avoid irritating his sensitive wings. Once standing, Aizawa ruffled his hair affectionately, guiding him out of the room and towards the living room. As they entered the living room, Hizashi looked up from where he was lounging on the couch, his hair pulled up into a casual bun, and his glasses perched on his nose. A warm smile spread across his face when he saw Izuku. Hey kiddo. You feeling all right? Izuku rubbed his arm awkwardly, glancing at Aizawa for support. His father stepped in smoothly, his voice reassuring. He's all right, love. He's just going through molt right now. Can you grab some blankets and one of the spray bottles? Hizashi nodded, standing up and patting Izuku's shoulder gently as he passed by. Of course. We've got you covered, birdie. He gave him a smile before heading to the storage closet to gather what was needed. Izuku settled onto the middle of the couch as Shoyuta handed him the remote, feeling a bit out of place as he clutched the pillow next to him. The space around him felt too open compared to the safety of his nest. The vulnerability of molting made him feel exposed, and he wasn't used to accepting help during these times. Yet, as he scrolled through the options and picked a movie, he found some comfort in the normalcy of it all. When Hizashi returned with the spray bottle and blankets, he draped one of the blankets over Izuku's legs, then sat down beside him. Aizawa joined them, sitting on Izuku's other side. With Hisashi handling the spray bottle and Aizawa gently preening his wings, Izuku began to relax, the sensation of the old feathers being carefully removed soothing the persistent itch. The movie played in the background, the sound filling the silence as Izuku leaned into his father's gentle touches. The care they took with his wings, the way they were so attuned to his needs, made his heart ache in a different way. This was what family was supposed to feel like, safe and warm. When they were finished, Hisashi stood and stretched before heading to the bathroom to start a warm bath, while Aizawa disappeared into the kitchen to prepare something for Izuku to eat. Left alone on the couch, Izuku pulled the blanket tighter around himself, the fabric still warm from his father's embrace. Hisashi returned a few minutes later, wiping his hands on his pants. "Alright, little listener, the bath is all set for you. Your dad and I will clean up the feathers in your room if that's alright with you." Izuku smiled, the simple question filling him with gratitude. They always asked, never assuming or pushing. "Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Papa." He stretched his wings a bit, the dull ache easing as he got up to head to the bathroom. Aizawa walked in just as Izuku was leaving, handing him a bowl of sliced fruit. "Here, you go relax and rest. We'll be out here if you need anything." Izuku nodded, accepting the bowl with a smile before heading to the bathroom. When he walked in, the sight of the steaming bath made him sigh in relief. They'd even placed a tray over the tub with a book and his favorite bath products. The small gestures, the way they seemed to know exactly what he needed, filled his heart with warmth. He undressed and sank into the water, the heat seeping into his muscles and washing away the tension that had built up over the day. He reached for the bowl of fruit, nibbling on a piece as he let the warmth envelop him. After soaking for nearly an hour, Izuku finally decided to get out of the bath, feeling thoroughly relaxed. He drained the tub, dried himself off, and slipped into the pajamas Hisashi had left for him. The shirt was one of Hisashi's favorites, a "put your hands up" radio shirt with slits in the back for his wings. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle at the choice. Once dressed, he grabbed a comb and some hair products, heading back to the living room. When he sat down in front of Hisashi, he handed him the comb and products without a word, a quiet request for help. Hisashi smiled, immediately beginning to detangle Izuku's hair and gently preen the stray feathers that had tangled with it. Izuku glanced over at Aizawa, who was grading papers with a look of deep concentration, his brows furrowed as he read through the assignments. "What are you grading, Dad?" Izuku asked, curiosity piqued. "Hero ethics," Aizawa replied with a sigh, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I don't even know how some of these students manage to make it into UE. Most of them are just trying to show off how amazing their quirk is." His tone was teasing, but there was a hint of exasperation in it. Izuku chuckled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he relaxed under Hisashi's care. "Sounds like teenagers." Aizawa shot him a look, one brow raised in amusement. "Izuku, are you forgetting you're only 9? Izuku grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I don't see how that's relevant." Hisashi's laughter was infectious, filling the room with a warmth that seemed to chase away the lingering shadows in Izuku's mind. Aizawa, though still focused on grading, couldn't help but smile at the playful exchange. It was in these quiet moments that Izuku realized just how much he cherished the new normal his fathers had given him, a life filled with love, support, and the simple joy of being understood. "Alright, Birdie, I'm all done," Hisashi said, his laughter finally subsiding as he gently patted Izuku's back. "Why don't you head to bed? And don't forget to take your meds, alright?" Hisashi leaned in to give him a hug, the kind that made Izuku feel safe, like he was truly home. Izuku nodded, the familiar nickname wrapping around his heart like a warm blanket. "Okay, Papa. Good night." He stood up, his wings stretching slightly before settling back against his shoulders. The weight of the day, with all its small anxieties and moments of comfort, was beginning to pull at his eyelids. As he walked back to his room, the hallway seemed to echo with the gentle hum of nighttime in their home. The faint sound of Aizawa's pen scratching against paper, the rustling of Hisashi tidying up the living room, it all created a melody of domestic peace that Izuku had never known before. When he entered his room, The sight that greeted him was a far cry from the mess he had woken up to. The feathers that had once covered the floor were gone, leaving the space clean and inviting. His nest was just as he left it, the blankets carefully arranged, almost as if they had been waiting for his return. Izuku climbed into his nest, the familiar softness welcoming him back. He reached for his medication on the bedside table, the routine something that had become a small but important part of his new life. The pills were a reminder of what his mother caused, but he had his father's right next to him every step of the way. After taking his medication, Izuku nestled deeper into his blankets, the scent of home of his dad's filling his senses. He smiled to himself, a quiet, contented smile that only grew as he let his thoughts drift. The warmth in his chest, the sense of being loved and protected, was something he still marveled at. It was like a dream he was afraid to wake up from, but every day his new family showed him that this was real, and it was his to keep. The darkness of the room was no longer something to fear. Instead, it wrapped around him like the embrace of a loved one, comforting and safe. As his eyes fluttered shut, he felt the weight of the day melt away, leaving him with nothing but the soft, lingering warmth of his family's affection. Izuku had just graduated middle school at the young age of 10. Aizawa always teased him, questioning whether he had an intelligence quirk. Nemuri's presence was known right when her dark purple car pulled into the driveway, her loud pop music blasting through the speakers. She walked through the door with a smile brighter than the sun. Her face screamed pride. Hisashi chuckled while Shoyuta sighed. Nemuri made a sound similar to a tea kettle. "There's my nephew." She ran up to him to wrap him in a bone-crushing hug, twirling him around in a childish manner. "I'm so proud of you, Birdie." "Such a smart cookie," she exclaimed, pulling away from the hug to pinch his cheeks. Izuku hugged her back, a deep comfort found in her embrace. Izuku groaned in an embarrassed tone, waving her hands away. "Thanks, Auntie." His voice was clear, not how it used to be 2 years ago when he first started living with his dads. Hisashi brought a hand up to his face in a joking manner, wiping away a non-existent tear. "My baby bird is growing up so fast," he sobs. "Your dad and I are so proud." He gushed, opening his arms to envelop him in a hug. Shoyuta nods, ruffling the kid's near black hair. "So proud," he added, mumbling. His face partially covered by his scarf, but you could see a slight upturn of his lips. Nemuri joined the hug, kissing the crown of Izuku's head. His wings fluttered slightly out of embarrassment, but he soon relaxed into it, chasing for the warmth that he now grown used to. Nemuri pulled away from the hug slightly, her eyes held a familiar glint. "Why don't we celebrate with a meal and we could watch that documentary you've been talking about?" she asked, ping an eyebrow. Hisashi smiled, pulling away from the hug as well to push his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. "What do you think, Aizu?" Hisashi added, leaving the choice to Izuku fully. Izuku looked over to Shoyuta, who shrugged, gesturing for him to decide. Izuku smiles warmly. Yeah, that sounds nice." Izuku agrees, nodding his head. The kitchen became a mess fairly quick. Flour was everywhere, coating the granite tables, and the clothes the four wore white. Izuku's feathers, which were once black, had become more of a gray color from the flour getting stuck in between his feathers. After cleaning up, the family curled up on the couch with many pillows and blankets, the mess now cleaned up in the kitchen, and each one of them held a plate that had katsudon and cookies. The documentary played, and Izuku thinks this is exactly where he's supposed to be. Since Izuku finished middle school, this meant a visit with Nezu, which both parents dreaded, but Izuku was excited. Izuku sat in his usual charm, more like love seat that he sits in during his lessons with Nezu, while his parents sit down at the chairs across from Nezu's desk. Nezu claps his hands together, his face now easy to read, unlike how he could hardly tell what the Chimera was thinking of when he first met him. The playful exchanges they have are comforting to him. "Izuku, you've done excellent in school," he praises. Izuku smiles with pride, his wings fluffing ever so slightly. "Thank you, Nezu-san," he exclaimed. Nezu's praise meant something to him. It made him feel all fluttery and at ease. Nezu shuffled around some papers on his desk before looking back at the three. "I've arranged this meeting to talk about the upcoming school year," he announced, his eyes gleaming. Hisashi tilted his head curiously. Is he going to do high school? He crossed his legs comfortably. Nedzu nods. It's up to Izuku, he can wait till she's of age to go into high school or he could start early, he said. Izuku looked over to both his parents, silently asking what they thought. Shoyuta shrugged. It's up to you, kid, he stated, stretching his back out. Hisashi nodded, sending him a wink. What your dad said, he added, intertwining his hand with his husband's. Izuku nodded, a small smile on his face. I'd like to start high school. Nedzu clapped his hands together, smiling with glee. Splendid, young one. Now I do have a couple questions for you about your courses. Izuku tilted his head. You can choose to take accelerated courses that can help you graduate high school with a college degree, or you can take courses that are more mainstream. He asked. Izuku hums, thinking for a moment before answering. I'd like to take the accelerated courses, he decides. Nedzu smiled, flipping through the pages before handing him a schedule. I had an idea you'd say that, so now on to my next question. If you graduate high school early, seeing as how you've done so far, I'm assuming you will. I would like to place you in more classes, such as medical training, professional analysis classes, and if you'd like, a support course class like the one we have at UE. He said, handing over a piece of paper that had all the classes and courses on his schedule. Izuku beams, looking over to his dad's. Shoyuta shrugged, letting him know that he had full control over this decision. Hisashi just held a thumbs up. Izuku nods quickly. I'd be honored, he exclaimed. Nedzu looked up to the clock to check the time, and of course, we would keep. The lessons you have with me, would that be too much for you? He asked with an honest tone to his voice. Izuku shook his head, a determined expression flashed across his face. Middle school felt too easy, Nedzu-san, I want more of a challenge, he assured. Nedzu nodded, and squinted his eyes and wore a grin. Wonderful. You will see an update on your online courses soon. We will be in contact, he said, excusing them. They left his office, waving. Shoyuta grabbed a jelly pouch out from his capture weapon and began to drink it. You know how proud I am of you? He said truthfully. Izuku flushed, feeling embarrassed. Even though he had lived with them for a year so far, he hasn't gotten used to the constant praise. You have said that a lot recently, he mumbled. Hisashi ruffled the kid's hair before resting his hand onto his shoulder. Well, you deserve to hear it, honey, he agreed, patting Izuku's shoulder a couple times. Shoyuta grunted in agreement. The sound of the jelly pouch crinkling filled the hallway. Izuku smiled, feeling more free than flying has ever felt. Inko Midoriya was found guilty for commercial SXL exploitation of children. The court session was unbearable and long. Izuku could only find himself floating, the feeling of dissociating making his brain feel fuzzy and time felt slow but yet fast. The cold, sterile room, the distant sound of shuffling papers and hushed voices contrasted how he felt. His eyes focused on the ground, counting the amount of seams ripped up from the flooring. He counted the laces on his attorney's shoes. He could hear the air conditioning making a white noise in the background. He smelt the many body sprays that all the people are wearing. He did anything to not focus on the fact his mother stared at him with pure hatred. Her green eyes seemed like they were burning red with rage. She screamed many things. He's a effing lair. He just wants attention. He was asking for it. He enjoyed it. He never enjoyed a single moment of his life with his mother, not when the lights turned off in his bedroom and he could hear the door lock, not when his mother smiled at him, not when he could hear her drunken voice wailing, not when he felt the vodka bottle break across his head, not when she would clip his feathers so he couldn't fly away. Not ever. He could feel his father's burning with rage. Hisashi's hand that rested on Izuku's shoulder tightened its grip, the knuckles turning white. He could nearly hear his teeth clenching. Shuta's face looked calm but his eyes were twitching. Small flickers of red could be seen from his eyes as he tried to maintain his composure. Were they mad at him? Did they believe her lies? Had they fallen to her tricks like he had many times before? That's what he thought until he heard the next words. We, in the jury, find the defendant guilty of the charge of commercial SXL exploitation of children. Izuku felt tears brimming in his eyes as his fathers hugged him tightly. He was free, for the first time in a long time. Izuku was tense in the back seat, his suit itching every fiber of his being. He just wanted to get out of this uncomfortable outfit and lay in his bed. The car's engine filled the silence, along with the quiet radio music. His dad looked at him from over his shoulder in the passenger seat. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" Shoyuta asked, his voice soft and quiet. Izuku is quiet for a moment, trying to process what he's feeling. "I feel," he pauses, thinking about what to call this feeling, "free." He explains. Hisashi quips up from the driver's seat. "That's a good feeling, right?" He questioned. His eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror to lock eyes with his son. Izuku hums, nodded slightly, his wings twitching from being still for too long. "I think so." He mumbled, his shark talons going to scratch at his wrist. Shoyuta adjusts in his seat, shifting slightly. "When we get home we can order takeout of your choice, and then you can just relax for the night. All right, bud," he comforted, reaching back in an awkward position to ruffle Izuku's hair, who smiled and nodded. Izuku sat on his nest, his knees pulled to his chest and his wings wrapped around him, a desire to shield himself from his own emotions. It's been a while since he's felt like this. Empty. Numb. But could you blame the child? His mother was found guilty, meaning that everything that happened was true. Izuku knew that, but something deep down inside him told him that maybe it was a dream, maybe he deserved it because he wasn't a good boy. His mother being found guilty meant that people believed him, that he wasn't lying. So why does he feel so empty? He should feel happy, ecstatic even, but the young boy deep inside of him is crying for his mom, for her comforting presence, for her warm embrace, to play hero with. She no longer had a comforting presence, but a terrifying one. One that will emit fear into him and make him apologize for nothing at all. So why did he feel like this? His mother was in jail, the men who hurt him are in jail, he's safe with his dads and family, he's excelling in school, he's been hanging out with Kak and more. So why must he feel sad and upset? Is this feeling karma coming to him because he got his mother in prison? He misses his mother. Not who she was now, but who she once was. A woman who cherished her son, who sung lullabies to and cradled him softly in her arms. Who would put band-aids on his knees after scuffing them at the playground with Kaken and kiss it to make it feel better. His mother, who once was an amazing person, is now an evil person. In a way, she died the day Hisashi left and accused her of an affair. Izuku never really had the chance to grieve his mother, the mother that used to love him and cherish him. His wrists ached. Why did they ache? His feathers trailing up his fingers were stained crimson, sticky and uncomfortable. His pale skin contrasting to the dark red that was dripping from his wrists. Was he hurt? How did he get hurt? His talons were dripping droplets of blood, the metallic smell overwhelming his nostrils. Did he do this? Izuku's mind started to clear, the stinging pain grounding. Izuku looked down at his wrists, seeing his talons scratching at his arms. The sharp nails digging into the skin, blood seeping from the cuts. His eyes widen, his heart racing and his mind panicking. He didn't mean to, truly he didn't. But why was the pain so welcoming?